Hey there, constant listeners. I know you're busy reading the next book in our journey, Dolores Claiborne, and you're probably even revisiting The Stand. But here's some good news. King has a new book. Not just any book, a collection of 4 novellas. One involves a rat, one follows a man who contains multitudes, one surrounds a phone with an afterlife, and another includes one of your favorite King characters, Holly Gibney. It's called If It Bleeds, and like different seasons in 4 Past Midnight, these stories will take you to intriguing and frightening places and give you one good scare. If It Bleeds by Stephen King, available now wherever books are sold.
Consequence Podcast Network.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome yet again to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast. My name is Rockin' Randall Colburn, and today we're braving the whipping wind and chilly spray of Little Tall Island with 1992's Dolores Claiborne. Before we get started, however, I want to thank everyone who's contributed to our Patreon. And if you're considering becoming a patron, know that we just wrapped up our 4-part revisitation of 1994's The Stand miniseries, and dare I say, it is the best 4-part revisitation of the 1994's The Stand in the midst of a global pandemic that has ever been recorded. So you simply must become one of us in the Barrens. Patreon.com/the Barrens. We've also got some mini-sodes on the way this month, as well as a newsletter and more exclusive content. Anything you can donate is appreciated in this time. We appreciate it so much. So before we get started, let's meet who is joining us today. Who is joining us from Texas? Who are you, and how was your weekend?
Hi, this is Dan Dolores Claiborne, Caffrey. I figure I would keep the initials the same since it's the same as mine. My weekend is good. I just finished my MFA at UT Austin, so I'm feeling accomplished. Although I had that weird day yesterday where after all the fun graduation stuff, I had kind of that what now feeling, but I'm feeling good today. And I think after this podcast, I'm just going to read a bunch today, watch some movies, and take it easy. So it's been a relaxing as it can be, anyway.
What are you going to read?
I started Under the Sea Wind by Rachel Carson. Have any of you read that? So, yeah, super cool. She was the scientist who wrote from the viewpoint of animals and tried to merge lyricism with scientific accuracy. So it's broken up into 3 sections. One is the point of view of seabirds, one's the point of view of a mackerel, and the other is the point of view of the eel. So we go further and further into the abyss. And then my friend Jeff just lent me this Russian sci-fi novel called, I think, Ra or something like that. I don't know. It looks really cool. It has Osiris on the front. That's all I know about it. So that's what I'm reading today. I need to take I have Nightmares and Dreamscapes, but I need to take a break from King, I think. I've been reading just Stephen King back to back.
I was going to say, how dare you read anything that isn't
Stephen King? I know. Well, I have 7 stories left in Nightmares and Dreamscapes. I had a copy of Elevation, which is really short, so I might read that in the next week. But
knowing you, Dan, you will finish Elevation in 13 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Well, you said it was like a Hallmark movie, though, right?
Yeah, we're not huge fans of Elevation on the pod.
A little corny. Yeah. Hey, I'm always down for some corny King, especially Children of the Corn and its many sequels. So yeah, that's my weekend.
Love it. Who is joining us from Chicago? Who are you, and how was your weekend?
Hello, this is Lara Unnerstall. Did I say that correctly?
I think so.
Yeah, you did.
I've been talking in that voice in my head since the moment I started reading this book, so that's just happening. My weekend is fine. Time is meaningless, and every day bleeds into the next. That's all I have to say.
I relate to that. Well, that's good to hear.
I feel like Lara's description was a more accurate summation of the world than mine was. So I was like, yeah, it's fun. And you're just
we got the optimistic version, and then we got the more realistic version, I think. So it's good to have you on, Lara. You were on our Gerald's Game episode, which I think will be a big boon to this pod, since nobody else on this pod was on that. But we are obviously familiar with Gerald's Game. So that'll be fun. And we also have a very special guest joining us on this episode, Ana Marie Cox. You may know her from Crooked Media's With Friends Like These podcast, or her writing in the New York Times and elsewhere. Ana, how are you?
I have a name. I was going to be Ana Marie Gory B. Cox.
Love it. Love it.
I'm proud of myself. Thank you. I'm joining you from Minneapolis, where it is a gray day, which I've come to really appreciate because it's the sunny days that make me feel really inside.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm really super excited. I'm a huge fan of the podcast. And I actually, for your listeners, another relevant podcast is I do a podcast about The Expanse. For the Sci-Fi Channel with Dan Dresner, who's an international relations scholar at Tufts. And we do like a sci-fi analysis. And we actually just started a special edition called the Churn Pandemic Edition, where we're reading pandemic fiction and analyzing it through the lens of political science, which hopefully sounds fun for some people. And we did Dan has it's a textbook. It's an Oxford textbook called Theories of International Relations and Zombies.
Oh, nice.
Which he does what we're talking about with zombie canon. And we just finished talking about Chuck Wendig's The Wanderers. And in a couple weeks, we're going to talk about World War Z. So,
oh nice. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to check out Wanderers. I've been reading a lot about that book.
Well, I mean, it depends on how triggered you're going to be.
I would be very triggered. I can't do it. I can't do it right now.
It's pretty intense, but it's been helpful in a weird way because all of the books that we're reading and all the stuff we're reading is so much worse than things actually are. So
we've talked a lot about that on the Stand episodes because there's two schools of thought. There's that I don't want to be reminded about anything remotely like what's going on right now, but then and I fall into your camp too. I'm like, well, this is not Captain Trips. This is not a zombie apocalypse, so it makes me weirdly feel better about it. Not that this isn't bad.
Although I will say there's a dark side too, which is that a lot of the stuff that we talk about in terms of the political science and kind of punditry of it, some of the reactions in the different fictional worlds are scarily close. To the mishandling.
Yes, safe to say mishandling.
Yeah, like it's funny, like how the CDC just isn't trusted by anyone writing in this genre. So
yeah. Has anybody here watched The Expanse? Dan, did you watch that?
No, I was just talking to my brother-in-law about it last night. I've been meaning to. I've heard really, really good things. Do you guys watch it?
No, I've been wanting to. I do think that's cool that you're exploring it from sort of the socio-political. I mean, when I watch I know it's Battlestar Galactica and Expanse are very different, but that was always my favorite part of BSG was sort of the political sort of undertones of it.
Well, there's a similarity in that they're both not really about space, right? Like they're much more about the characters and I know actually with The Expanse, like it's a very intentional exploration of like race and class. I've often said it's the only popular work of like TV that explores the labor issues around space. So there's a union plays a huge role in the plot.
Oh, nice.
So
isn't Thomas Jane on that show?
He's very prominent in the first season. And then
we're big Jane heads.
Yeah, I know. And then bad things happen to him. and then
they tend to.
And weirdly, he comes back. So I won't. No spoilers. But
no spoilers.
It is. I mean, Dan. The reason I even am working on this with Dan Dresner is he also writes a column for the Washington Post. It's about politics. And he wrote a column a couple of years ago calling The Expanse the best show about politics on television. And then also other people have called it just the best show, best streaming show out there. It's amazing. So
cool.
That's my
What's
plug.
the name of the podcast again?
It's called The Churn, which is what is sort of a term for Earth's, problems and whatnot. Like it's the churn. You're living in the churn.
Cool. Well, check that out, listeners. That sounds fun. But we are here today to discuss Stephen King. So I would love to hear a little bit about your relationship, Ana, with King. Where did your sort of journey as a constant reader begin? Where did you discover him at first? We always love to ask that to our guests, and love to hear your thoughts.
So this is going to be like a 4-hour podcast, right? Because
we've done longer.
So, you know, I think I was thinking about my first exposure to King, and I think it was. Oh, sorry, I have a dog too.
Oh, that's okay. I like
right.
the cameos by animals.
All right, that's Exley, named after Fred Exley for the
love it
literary folks out there. So I think the first Stephen King book I read was Christine, like sometime in middle school, and I'm pretty sure I fell in love right away. Was very fortunate to have a mom that really encouraged just reading in general, you know, like she wasn't real picky about what I read. Yeah. And I also had this this actually started a very bad habit, which is that if I had a bedtime, and then if I couldn't sleep, I got to read. So I would like lay in bed with like my fingers like clenched and like, you know, just like I'm going to stay awake for 15 minutes so I can read some more. And Stephen King was the thing I was always reading. And then like my real kind of affinity with him in a way started very recently. He's always been a favorite author. I actually remember getting into an argument with a teacher in high school about whether or not he was counted as literature. And she was like, he writes too much. And I'm like, well, what about John Updike? Which I can't believe that I was able to pull that out of my back pocket like at 15. But I think my mom might have said something about it. But anyway, so I'm in recovery. Like I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I happened to reread The Shining like literally while I was in the psych ward getting ready to go to rehab. And I can't believe they let me read it. Really? It was a public hospital, like kind of like that's a whole nother story. They took my shoelaces, you know, and my glasses and left me my novel. But I guess it was a paperback, so I couldn't harm myself. And of course, like that, it wasn't the first time I'd read it, but being where I was in the state of mind that I was, it was the scariest it had ever been to me. You know, like that scene where he goes into the bar and all of a sudden the bottles appear.
Yeah.
I just got chills. I remember having to put the book down and like I'm getting a little like caught up in it talking about it now because that's like the alcoholic's worst nightmare, you know, like you go to these extreme lengths to get away from your problem and then all of a sudden it appears, which is kind of what that book is about, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It is bar none the best book about alcoholism out there, except maybe Fred Exley's A Fan's Notes, which the dog is named after. So I started rereading his stuff, you know, I guess it would be 10 years ago now, with kind of that in the back of my mind. And I guess my appreciation for him has just increased. I mean, I think he's one of the best writers about mental health and alcoholism, you know, exploring those issues. I mean, there's a lot of problems, which we'll get into with this one, and the way that he writes about women and the way he writes about abuse.
Sure.
Which I will give him points for effort on that. I think he has a very genuine, like, care and concern around, you know, gender and sexism and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But anyway, like, I've really enjoyed my kind of re-exploration of his stuff. And I think that's also when I started listening to y'all's podcast and doing the deep dive. It's hard to find people doing really, really deep dives on King who, like, aren't academics and stuff.
Yeah.
So I've just really appreciated it. And I think the King's Dominion stuff is also newly fascinating for me. Oh, and I forgot, I also reread the Dark Tower series, like when I was newly sober.
Nice.
Yeah.
And there's a lot in there about recovery. And
oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, with everything with Eddie and for sure.
Right. And Father Callahan. And if I may tell my brief story about Father Callahan, like I have this other kind of really intense moment with King where I was in my first year of recovery and I was having a really bad period. And I don't remember exactly why, but anyway. And one of the ways I dealt with like kind of getting away in a way was reading King. Like I'd stay up late, kind of like when I was a kid. And that usually is pretty escapist, except for this. And even when he dealt with the same themes that I was dealing with, it was like in a way that I could handle. And I can't remember which book it was, but I was reading one of the Doc Terra series, and it's when Callahan relapses. Yep. And he's like going through a series of relapses because his buddy's been killed by vampires, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
that's in Wolves of the Calla,
right? Right. And he has this thing where he's like relapsing, constantly relapsing, and it's because he has all this grief. And the way he's thinking about booze, it's like, well, it's, he's got this hopelessness about it. And I remember like reading that and thinking like, oh my God, I so identify. King is so good at this. I feel exactly like Father Callahan, except for the vampires part. Like that, I'm not dealing with that, but everything else I'm totally dealing with. And then I had this wild thought, which is that, okay, a year ago, Ana, if someone had told you either you're going to stay sober for a year or vampires exist, which one would you think was more likely? And of course, vampires. So then in my weird, like, not, sleep deprived mind, I was like, wait a minute, I'm sober. So maybe vampires exist.
Nice.
Ergo.
And I don't know, like that's kind of stayed with me ever since then, which is like there's this leap of imagination, I guess, that takes to get sober. That maybe that's also something that happens for King. Like if anything can happen, there's this world in which anything can happen. And I don't know, that's my very long and very sort of intense relationship with King.
No, that's really cool, and it really speaks to where we've been in the pod over the last year or so, because I think starting with Misery, we've always talked about King's addiction issues, but I would say that, after he got sober post Tommyknockers, it's obviously been weighing a little bit more, but we were talking about a lot in Tommyknockers, a lot in Misery when he was still using. It was, but you could see that when he was writing those books, he was aware of how it was destroying him in a lot of ways. And because those themes are really baked in, just like how with The Shining, that is a book that is very much about the destructive powers of alcoholism in so many ways, even though he was using when he was writing it. I feel like there's a lot of similarities with Misery and with and Tommyknockers, where it's not overt necessarily. I mean, in some ways it is overt. I mean, Gardner and Tommyknockers is a mess, but it's like it is baked in there. And then also post after he recovered, like I remember reading The Library Policeman. That book in many ways like resonated in themes of recovery, AA, things of that nature were baked in there, as well as, and then we jumped ahead a little bit and did a book review of Dr. Sleep when the movie was out. Mm-hmm. And that book obviously is very, very much about that. And honestly, my favorite parts of that book are the ones about Danny getting clean. Like that, we talked a lot about that in the episode, because that stuff is rendered in such, like, I don't know, you can just see that, and especially with Dr. Sleep, he's been doing it for 30 years or 25 years roughly, and so it's like that culture is so, it's he's so familiar, and he's navigating it with such sort of like a tenderness, but also a knowledge, and it's really affecting when you look at it through that lens.
Yeah, so Dr. Sleep, one of the reasons I loved that AA stuff, it's like one of the only accurate portrayals of AA that you find in like popular literature. Like a lot of people, they just know about the meetings.
Yeah.
And he kind of gets into like step work and sponsors and a bunch of stuff that y'all even probably kind of aren't sure what I'm talking about, but it's like cool to see.
Right.
Yeah.
As a person doing it. So
that's cool.
All right.
Well, yeah, so why don't we talk a little bit about maybe your first encounter with this book, Dolores Claiborne. Was this one that you discovered, later in your King fandom, or was it something you read when you were younger?
So I think, one of the benefits of being an alcoholic, because there's a lot of books I've read that I don't remember. Yeah. And I get the joy of rediscovering them. This one I am sure I read. I am not sure I have some joy in rediscovering. Like I had this like memory of the basic plot, like as I was reading it. But it was tough going, I gotta say. Sure. I do put it squarely in his, occasional series, like I was saying earlier, of exploring abusive relationships. Mm-hmm. And again, like I do appreciate that he's genuinely interested in trying to kind of figure it out. Yeah. But it's sometimes a little tough. Yeah. like to kind of, as someone who's got some connections to that, like it's not always comfortable reading.
Right.
Put it that way.
And what edition did you read?
Oh, I believe I have a first edition that's British. It has the price in pounds in it.
Nice.
And I got it used like from like Abe Books or something, or if it's Abe Books, I don't know. So it has like the, Dolores standing over the well with the eclipse behind her on the cover.
Yeah.
And it has incredibly wide margins. I don't know if anyone else has that. So it kind of pads it out to like 200 and something pages.
Interesting.
But I'm not sure if it was written in like stand font, it would get that far.
Right. Lara, what edition are you reading, and how did you first encounter this book?
So I am reading the first Pocketbooks paperback edition, May 2016. I purchased it from a local Chicago bookstore called The Bookseller via their online shopping because I wanted to, support them in this moment in time. It is, it's a paperback. It's got actually a staircase winding down, an ominous winding staircase on the cover, and Dolores Claiborne is written in sort of handwritten font. What's interesting is that on page 208, the next sentence didn't make sense on the following page, and I was like, what? And I looked, and it went from page 208 to page 213. And I was like, what the hell? So anyway, that was just a weird little quirk that I noticed in this edition of it, which I'm sure makes it worth millions of dollars until I dog-eared every other page. Anyway, so I thought that I had read this book when I was, and it's funny, Anna, you were saying about, forgetting. I mean, as a, I don't know if it's just because I'm forgetful or depressed or was just a giant nerd as a child who read too many books. I think I also started reading a lot of books and then didn't finish them. And I think that's might happened here. Because I very distinctly remember the movie and loving the movie when I was younger. And I thought I had read the novel, but I think I maybe never actually finished it. So that's why I started reading it and I'm like, this is familiar, but I couldn't totally remember how it actually played out. So it was nice to, air quotes, nice to reread it and rediscover it. And I agree. I mean, we can get into that, but that answers your question, and I will stop talking.
Nice. Dan, how about you?
Yeah, my first exposure to it was, I always talk about this period when I was between 9 and 10, where my dad was, who was a Stephen King fan when he was growing up. He was catching up on all the books he had missed. And I remember he read this one, and I don't think this is one they let me read when I was super young, but I asked him about it, and he told me what it was about, and he was like, there's no monsters or anything, you don't want to read it. Like, he was very, because there's no supernatural element. I mean, there's a little bit of a supernatural element with the Gerald's Game connection, but outside of that, it wasn't a Cycle of the Werewolf, it wasn't the Salem's Lot. So I remember him telling me what it was about, and me as a kid being like, oh yeah, I don't want to read that. That sounds sad and boring. Which of course I do think the book is captivating in its own way, despite not being supernatural. I'm trying to think, what was the last completely non-supernatural book he wrote before this? Because I feel like the past few, I guess Gerald's Game, right? Because that's pretty.
Yeah, I mean Gerald's Game, and then Misery. I mean, this was like we've discussed on the pod, like kind of post it. He was really trying to move away from being like primarily a horror writer, so he'd still knock out like Tommyknockers and stuff, but yeah, there, I think like even with 4 Past Midnight, well, I guess I take it back, those are like all supernatural except for Secret Window.
Yeah. I think too, because I've still been trying to read everything along with the pod, even with the episodes I'm not on, and I think the last one I read before this was Needful Things, which is weirdly that little dwarf in the end makes it kind of supernatural. But yeah, so then I can't remember when I actually read it. I know I saw the movie first with Kathy Bates and Jennifer Jason Leigh before I read it, and I remember being surprised that it was a monologue, a first-person monologue, which I know we'll get into. And then edition that I have, it sounds like I have one similar. I have the U.S. first edition, which sounds similar to Anna's, except for the poundage as a sign of currency. Anna, does yours have on the pages? Does yours have like this weird border with the eclipse in the middle and two moons on either side of it. Yeah, so it sounds like, because mine's also like 305 pages, but I think it would probably be 150 pages or so if it was in closer type. So yeah, and I think I got this I probably got it at Half Price Books. I feel like that's where I get most of my King First editions. So that's me. What about you, Randall?
Yeah, I was such a King completist when I was, when I was like 13, 14 years old. But I remember I would always go to the library and get them, and there were certain books that I was like, oh, I'll read that one later, and I was always grabbing like the spookier looking ones. And I remember Dolores Claiborne was probably one of the last ones I picked, because I'm a 13-year-old kid. I'm just like, this doesn't really sound up my alley. But I did read it, and I read it after Gerald's Game, so I remember being intrigued by the connections between the two. But a lot like with Gerald's Game, these were books that were just a little bit beyond my life experience and interest at that point. So I know I read the whole thing, but I think I breezed it just so I could say I read it. And I know I read a first edition back then. I just got the Kindle edition now, so I didn't have a fancy one. I just read it on my Kindle. But it was, but yeah, it's like, but I do, there were certain moments of this book that I remembered very vividly from when I was young. And the one in particular, and I just think this is interesting, and we can talk more about it later, but it was the kiss that Jo gives her after she makes a sandwich for him, and when she knows she's going to kill him. Like, that to me was a weird moment that really resonated with me. The general concept of like a moment of tenderness amidst so much darkness, especially like, knowing what she was going to do, in some weird way that like wormed into the part of my brain that doesn't forget things. And so that was like, coming into this, I even forgot that this was, a straight up monologue. So to actually revisit it and be like only remembering that one bit and just sort of the general arc of the story was an interesting experience for me. So yeah. So before we dig into like our deeper thoughts, I'm going to read the synopsis that was in my version. And if any of your versions have a synopsis that's different or perhaps more interesting, sometimes they're a little silly and we like to have a chuckle about it. I'm going to read mine, and then let me know if you feel like yours deserves to be read. If not, we can move on. But
if it has a lot of adverbs in it, I love it when it's like nastily spine tingling or something.
Okay, here's mine. Dolores Claiborne has a story to tell, but it is not quite what the police had expected. Dolores Claiborne has a confession to make. ... She will take her time, won't be hurried, will do it her way, sparing neither details nor feelings, hers or anyone else's. This is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Truth that takes you to the edge of darkness. Dolores Claiborne has a story to tell, and you'd better pay attention, or else. So that's mine.
Wait, what does the or else mean?
I know. It's not like she's gonna like kill the cop if he doesn't listen.
Yeah, she's just gonna straight up shoot a cop in the face. Yeah, it's good.
So mine's super different. I don't know if Dan has the same, like if ours are similar being first editions, but mine's very, very different.
Let's hear it.
Read yours. I want to see if we have the. Yeah, it would be funny if it's the same, but just with some British tweaks to it.
Spellings, yeah.
Right. Yeah. By her own account, she's an old Yankee bitch, Dolores Claiborne. Foul temper, foul mouth, foul life. Folks on Little Tall Island have been waiting 30 years to find out just what happened on the eerie, dark day her husband Jo died, the day of the total eclipse. The police want to know what happened yesterday when rich, bedridden Vera Donovan, the island's grande dame sans mercy, and Dolores' longtime employer, died suddenly in her care. With no choice but to talk, Dolores Claiborne talks up a storm. Everything I did for love, she says. And this spellbinding novel is at once her confession and her defense. Given a voice as compelling as any in contemporary fiction, her story centers on a disintegrating marriage's molten core, where the mind's unblinking eye becomes huge with hate and a woman's heart turns murderous. It unfolds the strange intimacy between Dolores and Vera and the link that binds them. It shows, finally, how fierce love can be and how dreadful its consequences, and how the soul, harrowed by the hardest life, can achieve a kind of grace. Continued on back flap. They will come away with different verdicts for Dolores, perhaps, but once taken inside the dark room of her life, lit by the brilliant intensity of Stephen King's storytelling, they will never forget her.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the same on mine too. Yankee bitch and all. That's yeah. I also had not seen Grand Dame Sans Mercy. I guess that's a known saying, but I never heard it before.
I don't know about that.
Lara, is yours any more interesting? Do you feel it deserves a read?
No, it's actually it's very boring compared to all of those. It completely lacks color and lurid sort of purple prose. So, nope.
Alas.
Yep. You can check it out online if you're curious.
Well, I guess I think that, especially that last one, I think kind of gives, if you've not read this and you're listening to this podcast, which, what is wrong with you, then I think that helps set it up. But before we dig in, let's talk about a little bit of the history of the book. I've got some beats here. It was written between 1989 and 1992, published in 92. It was first printing of 1.5 million copies. Immediately hit number 1 on the New York Times hardcover bestselling list, and it did the same with the paperback edition, which Gerald's Game, which came out just before this, did not manage to do. So this was more successful than Gerald's Game. It was the best-selling novel of 1992 in the United States, and I found that impressive since that same year we also got John Grisham's The Pelican Brief. We got Robert James Waller's The Bridges of Madison County, and Cormac McCarthy's All the Pretty Horses. You're a Cormac guy, right, Dan?
Oh, I love Cormac McCarthy, yeah. Although Mel, our friend Mel Cassell, fellow loser, she hates Cormac McCarthy and feels like his stuff has not aged well. And I'd be curious to reread some of it after talking to Mel. And then maybe I would want to have words with her, or maybe we would agree with it. But I love Cormac McCarthy. I think he's fantastic.
Nice. So that's interesting. But another interesting thing about this is that this actually initially, Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne were supposed to be one book called The Path of the Eclipse. But I think he saw them as two novellas that sort of dovetailed off each other. But eventually it was, both books went on a little bit too long to justify one book. And I'm sure the publishers were like, hey, we release them, separately, make a lot more money. So there's that as well. But this is also notable because it's narrated by a single character. That is very, very, very rare for a King book. Can you guys think of another novel or novella that was narrated by a single character in the King canon? Because there is one.
Is it a novella? Yeah.
What'd you ask, Dan?
Is the one that you're thinking of, or that you've confirmed, is it a novella?
Yeah, it's a novella.
Or a novel. It's a novella. Is it in a collection of other novellas?
Yes.
Is it? Is it the
I'm narrowing it down.
Is it bigger than a bread box?
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess the Langoliers because it was all narrated by a Langolier.
I wish that was true. No, it was actually The Body. Stand by me, but it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know though. Does that count? Because that's like a book he's writing. I don't know. Maybe I guess it does.
But but it's not entirely like Dolores, because we do get those breaks where we read Gordy's awful story. So.
that gross like film noir kind of Chico.
Oh, grossness! We have a scene to talk about as far as like Stephen King's love of body.
Oh
yes.
Stuff.
So this was actually King's first novel to be told entirely in first person and without chapter breaks, but there was one other novel, not novella, that was told without chapter breaks that we have talked about on the pod. I'm looking at you, Dan. I think you were on this episode.
Without any chapter breaks?
Yeah, not first person, but just no chapter breaks.
It must have felt long, I'm guessing, because if it had no chapter breaks. I'm looking at I'm cheating. I'm looking at my shelf right now. It's not Needful Things. It's not 4 Past Midnight. It's no chapter breaks at all.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to say Roadwork just because that book sucks so bad, and I feel like that's maybe why it felt long. But I remember there being chapter breaks in Roadwork.
No. I will tell you whenever you're ready.
Tell me. I don't know if I can guess it.
The Great Cooge.
Really?
Oh.
No chapter breaks in it. It pivots around between characters, but it moved in that way.
So I love Cujo though. I feel like that book moves really well too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. So this was, and I think that points to what is so very singular about Dolores Claiborne, which is that it's more of a monologue really than anything.
More of. It is more of.
Yeah.
Have to audition for a theater role with this one really long monologue.
Hi, I'm doing a monologue from Stephen King's Dolores Claiborne. Cut to 3 hours later. You've got
cut to Phrygia.
Yeah, Phrygia.
Scene.
You've got the role. So yeah, this was, and actually what I do think is fun, and we talked about this on our Golden Years episodes, because Frances Sternhagen, longtime King collaborator and mother of Cliff Clavin on Cheers, she actually did the audiobook for Dolores Claiborne. So, and I actually thought that was kind of cool, just in the sense that, she really was just performing one long monologue instead of having, like I remember listening to the Revival audiobook with David Morse, and I love David Morse, but hearing him pivot between the different voices and the narrator thing, I'm not a huge audiobook guy for that reason, but I actually think this actually might have been a really fun exercise for an actor, because you just kind of get on a roll. Even though you are telling a story, it's fun. But this book was partially inspired by King's own mother, Ruth King. She spent many years caring for her senile parents, so I think some of the intense scenes with her and Vera in Vera's waning years were inspired, I think, probably by some stories that King's mother told him. And I've got a few quotes here that King said about the book. In the Paris Review 2006, he said, I do two different kind of books. I think of books like The Stand, Desperation, and the Dark Tower series as books that go out. Then there are books like Pet Sematary, Misery, The Shining, and Dolores Claiborne that go in. Fans usually will either like the outies or they'll like the innies, but they won't like both. Well, clearly he's not listening to the Losers Club podcast, because we like all kinds of books. And then he also said to the New York Times around the time the book came out, he said, when I write, I want to scare people. But there is a certain comfort level for the reader because you are aware all the time that it's make-believe. Vampires, the supernatural, and all that. In that way, it's safe. But these last two books, he's talking about this and Gerald's Game, take people out of the safety zone, and in a way is even scarier. Maybe it could happen. And in that same interview, he said, don't say that I'm stretching my range or that I've left horror behind. I'm just trying to find things I haven't done, to stay alive creatively. When you've made as much money as I have, there's a huge tendency to say you won't rock the boat. You'll just keep the formula flowing. I don't want to fall in that trap. But at the same time, what I am about is trying to scare people by getting inside their shields. And I'm going to continue to do that. So interesting quotes, I think, in relation to this. I also looked at just a few reviews of this book. It was mostly well received when it came out, I think, because King wasn't being taken seriously a lot around these times, and I think critics at least appreciated him trying to write like stories like this in Gerald's Game, which were didn't exist primarily to up the body count. I think, because Needful Things, as we discussed on the episode, was pretty panned when it came out, even though Mike and I are huge defenders of that book. But yeah, that was a book that a lot of critics panned. So I think they appreciated him pivoting to these smaller stories that, at least seem to have a little bit more on their mind. But there was a kind of a running theme that I saw in a few reviews, and including this one from the New York Times. But Dolores' story would have been so much more appealing if the men had been human beings too.
Oh, come on. Fuck off.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I saw this in several reviews. With human histories to explain their deviations into evil. But for the time being, at least, Mr. King is still writing horror stories about the contest between good people and monsters. So I thought that was interesting and something to maybe keep in mind as we dig into the themes of this book. So I think that's actually a nice dovetail into the hook.
Ah, yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
The hook is where we discuss the themes, the ideas, maybe the big picture of what whatever book we're discussing is about. And so I think maybe in a broad sense, I think with Dolores Claiborne, the general hook is, woman kills her husband who's making her and her family's life hell. And I think it could broadly be read as sort of a woman rebelling against the patriarchy of her society and her family. Or at least that's, I think, was King's intention. But I guess I want to hear a little bit from you guys about, what theme, do you think that's sort of an accurate summation of what he's trying trying to do with this book, and what other ideas do you see sort of bubbling to the surface as you were reading?
I'll go.
Yeah.
I think I thought I had a quote actually that I thought summed it up, but I'm not finding it. Maybe I'll look for it while other people are talking. But in some ways, I mean, very crude. I think in a way, the theme of the book is women be bitches.
Yes.
He uses that word a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't think he means it. I think he's genuinely trying to explore why some women harden.
Yeah.
Right? Or in his point of view, harden. Why to a person like Stephen King, some women turn out to be difficult and closed and hard. And I think, again, like, I think he has a genuine interest in this. And I think the best thing in the book for me is the relationship between Dolores and Vera. That is like,
yes,
a truly unique and I think in like loving portrait of a very kind of unusual kind of relationship that nonetheless like rang incredibly true for me.
That was exactly what I wrote about it. I just saying that I completely agree. My number one thing for me in this book is their relationship.
Yeah, same. But I do think that is what kind of it's about. It's about how some women become the women that they are. And the sort of unfortunate part for me is that I think that for him, it's like, why don't I like some women? Or why are some women so mean? Like, and he has like these long explanations for it, right? Like this entire build up for it. And I have a lot, well, I mean, we have lots of time, so I guess I'll get into like my opinions about other sort of aspects of the book. But I do think it's an exploration of like why, I'll just say some people turn out the way that they do. Also, because he kind of gets into like everyone in every major character in the book kind of has like a psychological backstory. So that's my understanding of the hook.
Interesting. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I agree with everything. I'm just gonna say I agree with everything you all said, and I have no other points to make. No, I'm interested in what Ana said about the psychological backstory, because I do think in this book, that New York Times review is funny to me for lots of reasons, but when I think about all the characters in this book, and there are some pretty scummy characters, including Dolores' husband, yeah, he does seem to be kind of bending backwards to explain their behavior, not justify their behavior necessarily, but to give some insight into like why this community also turns people into how they are. The thing about like women be bitches and everything that's interesting is that I agree in that, like, I do think King is authentic in his quest to honor the female characters and give them reasons for doing what they're doing. But then it gets into this weird argument of, well, why do they have to be? Why do we have to justify the fact that they're strong and don't want to take any shit? You know what I mean? That's what. And I don't know if that's a date. That might just be a product of when it was written, right? It's this thing of like, oh well, does being strong mean murdering someone and self-describing yourself as a bitch? It's just like he's going to really extreme lengths to justify strong womanhood, and that's where it gets a little complicated for me. And maybe sometimes he succumbs to this pitfalls that he often does when he writes about gender. But I still really did enjoy the book, and I did like Dolores' voice, and I always say this. I think King's politics have always been in the right place, even if sometimes the way he chooses to engage in those politics comes off a little crass or problematic. That's my piece.
Interesting. How about you, Lara?
I found my quote.
You go, Ana.
Sorry. It's on page 253 of my version, and she's talking about like her experience with Vera, and she says, and sometimes before I went to sleep, I'd think, this is how you pay off being a bitch. And it ain't no use saying if you hadn't been a bitch, you wouldn't have had to pay, because sometimes the world makes you be a bitch. When it's all doom and dark outside, and the only inside to first make a light and then tend to it. When it's all doom and dark outside, and only you inside to first make a light and then tend to it, you have to be a bitch. But oh, the price, the terrible price.
Yeah. I think you go, Lara.
I just that I had also flagged that quote, but I didn't know what to do with it. It was just something I dog-eared the page and was like, Yep. Like, here we go again with the bitch stuff. That bitch, Carol Baskin. Sorry. But yeah, no, and I mean, I think thematically it's interesting because, I mean, you end up really loving both Dolores and Vera in their way. And I do agree, it's like he's trying maybe a little too hard to justify the bitchiness. But it's interesting having read this right after reading Gerald's Game, because, and again, I struggle with this, and I'm struggling with how to even articulate it. But like, it's almost like they're generational, because in Gerald's Game, Jessie, who is the girl that Dolores sees in those visions wearing the striped dress and the peppermint, lip gloss. Jessie is pretty much the age of Dolores's daughter, Selena. And so, there's kind of a mother-daughter generational thing happening. And, Jessie's father is kind of diddling around with her in the same way that old Joe is with Selena. And so there's this paralleling, and they're on opposite sides of the island in the path of the eclipse. But in Gerald's Game, like, part of the conversation was that I think somebody, I can't remember, asked me and Jen, who was the other guest on the episode, like, do you feel like this did adequately, like, mirror how it feels to be a woman in a somewhat abusive relationship, or to, like, the internal monologue of Jessie, does that feel accurate to the, whatever, the feminine experience? But I think we agreed that, like, actually, shockingly, he did kind of nail it in that one, and there's much less of the, like, she's definitely self-pathologizing throughout the book, but there's much less of the, like, the language of being like, well, I guess I'm just a bitch. It's much more of an empowering book in a weird way, because it's all about how Jessie figures out how to, like, believe in herself, basically, and overcome this horrible situation that she's in. Whereas, like, Dolores kind of goes through similar actions, but she casts herself as, like, this hard-ass bitch who is completely unlovable, and, like, to the point where her own daughter doesn't love her, anymore because of what she did. But as a reader, I'm like, no, of course I love her, because she really, I don't know. I don't know what I'm getting at here. It's just that it's just interesting how those two books are in dialogue with each other, and especially that Gerald's Game was actually written before this. Like, I don't know if he was trying to play with, like, the generational differences and how women of different generations perceive themselves, and I don't know if I'm giving him way too much credit with that thought, but I don't know. That's it. Well, those are the thoughts.
The generational idea is interesting to me, because if there's one thing that I thought that kind of I took away when I was kind of going through the end here, was the ways that Dolores's actions sort of impacted her relationship with her children and with the rest of the general island, because like she says that, she has another line about being a bitch where she says there's no bitch on earth like a mother frightened for her kids, and she very much emphasizes that this hardening that happened to her, these extreme actions that needed to be taken against her husband ultimately, were done to protect her children, but they also ruined her relationship with her children. And then she's also got these, young bucks outside her house throwing shit on her lawn and yelling at her, and she's getting threatening phone calls. And I do think it's interesting that she at least frames her hardness and her own sort of severing of these relationships as being for the greater good, at least for the next generation. And that makes me think a lot about King's mother, because obviously he was writing about her. And I think in some ways you can draw sort of the line in that this was, when the society was even more aggressively patriarchal back in, I'm trying to remember, like, when is it the 60s? Yeah, the early 60s.
Yeah,
like in that time, women had to make more sacrifices to help their children and that next generation. So that's an idea that I thought was interesting, because she says something about how, like, I lost everything in order to lose, like, even more, and that to me was a striking idea. And I think it also ties into the general musings in the final pages about memory too, and sort of the way that we justify the things that we've done, and also the tension between what Vera did to her husband and how that hurt her relationship with her kids versus what Dolores did to her husband and how that affected her relationship with her kids, because there is sort of a tension between the two of them as well, whereas Vera spent her life sort of spinning these elaborate fantasies that her kids weren't dead and they were going to come and visit her someday, and that the actions that she took against her husband in that didn't hurt her relationship with her children, whereas Dolores, she says from the beginning, I'm here to tell the truth, and she is spinning no such elaborate fantasy, and that sort of draws the line between her and Vera and what she learned from Vera in some ways. So I don't know, do any of those themes like land with you guys? Is that something, does that clarify any of the thoughts you had on like generational ideas, Lara?
I mean, I don't know about completely clarify, but I mean, I think it is definitely an interesting build on it. I think that this, I guess I'm still kind of processing this book in a lot of ways and processing it in relation to Gerald's Game. And I don't really have I don't have an answer for you, but I do think it's all super interesting.
Yeah.
Deep thoughts from me.
Do you all think that, because the quote that Ana pulled, that Lara, you say you're thinking about, for me, does it come back to the terminology, do you think? Just her constantly referring to herself as a bitch, even though she did something pretty justifiable. And I don't know, like, I guess I'm thinking of, I won't go too far into it. My mom had to deal with this sort of thing in New Jersey where the community kind of went against her when she was the superintendent of this town. And it was she was very much like kind of publicly crucified in the local paper and all this stuff, but she held her ground or whatever. Now, my mom just looked at it like, I'm doing what I got to do. She wasn't giving interviews where she's like, yeah, I'm just like a stone cold bitch from New Jersey. Yeah, and I love being a bitch, and being a bitch is fucking awesome, and blah, blah. Do you think maybe that's where, because I feel like there's this like, kind of thing where I'll try to articulate, maybe that's it? Maybe it's just like the way King is framing it? I don't know. I don't know if any of you have thoughts on that.
I think that there is something to the language issue. I will say that, I get the strong feeling that she's reclaiming that word in the way that a lot of marginalized people reclaim, epithets, right?
Yes. Yes, it definitely felt like he was trying to do that.
Right, but I think trying is the operative word. I guess where it falls a little short for me is that, to me, it would have been more... I don't know obviously King knows his characters better than I do, and maybe there is like a little bit of self-hatred in Dolores that would come with using the word bitch, but I think Dolores is pretty fucking comfortable with who she is, and he's using the word bitch to try and like, I think, communicate that comfort, but and maybe it is generational. Maybe the women of that generation who did have to become strong, and I think Laura and I are both using, and you guys have used the word strong too as sort of an alternative to bitch, right? Maybe there's something to how women who came of age before, we could talk about feminism and patriarchy, didn't have a lot of other terminology to use.
Yeah.
And that I think could be part of it. And maybe it is just my generation, that's kind of reacting to that word a little bit. So. Yeah,
I could see that. I mean, there's no more thought there. It's just that, I agree.
I realized too, are we recording this on Mother's Day on purpose?
Yes, we are.
I was going to say that, like, this is an appropriate day for recording.
I was thinking about that, yeah.
We all should talk about our moms at some point. That'd be like, we'll make this a total therapy session.
yeah. I just talked to my mom right before this. I should. I'll get her on the horn and see what her thoughts on Dolores Claiborne. I don't know if my mom's not a huge King fan. I don't think she's read Dolores Claiborne. Maybe she has. I don't know.
I will say one year I saw that the same year that this book came out. Oh God, now I can't remember the name of it. Anne Rice's 1992 book. I'm looking it up right now. Only because I bought this book for my mom. Because she loved Anne Rice. The Tale of the Body Thief. I bought that. That came out in 1992, same year as this. And one year I bought it for my mom for her birthday because it was the only author that she really liked, at least at that time. I tried to get her into Stephen King. It did not work. But no. Anyways, that was an aside. Let's talk about. I'm curious about sort of the musings on memory that that kind of get woven in, and the ways that King uses 3 Mile Island, good Lord, Little Tall.
Wow, Randall.
I kept making that in all my notes. I kept making that mistake too.
Yeah, he's been inspired by the 3 Mile Island incident for a lot of other books.
Yeah,
but not this one.
Not this one. That would have been a very different book, which I also would have read. But the Reach as well, sort of the body of water that separates the island from Maine, like the actual mainland. And he has a story called The Reach, which we'll talk about in King's Dominion. But I thought this was interesting. So this is near the end of the book. I sat there and picked over those old bones one last time, and then I put them aside and got up from where I'd spent most of the day. I decided that I didn't much care what you or anyone else believed. It's all over, you see, for Joe, for Vera, for Michael Donovan, for Donald and Helga, and for Dolores Claiborne too. One way or another, all the bridges between that time and this one have been burned. Time's a reach too, you know, just like the one that lies between the islands and the mainland. But the only ferry that can cross it is memory, and that's like a ghost ship. If you want it to disappear, after a while, it will. I don't know. I sat on that line for a long time, and I was thinking a lot about, the 30 years that exist between, the majority of the story that is told in this book and the present of it, and the things that we do when we're young, and, the ways that we reflect on them when we're old. And that's obviously a theme that King touches on a lot. I mean, obviously that's a huge thing in it as well. But I don't know. What does that line conjure for any of you guys, like in the larger story of the book, like this gulf that exists between the present and the past, and this idea that memory is a ghost ship?
It's funny, I have that passage marked too, and next to it I have written trying too hard.
Well, it does feel like he's trying to connect thematic dots there, but I agree when you say he's trying a little bit too hard, because it almost feels so heavy-handed that I'm like, I feel like, am I thinking too hard about this line, so.
I think that, obviously, memory is really important in his work. I was also thinking about The Body, and also Christine, for that matter.
Yeah.
He has so many books that look at childhood. And this is unusual for him in that it's a book about memory that's not about childhood, right?
Yeah.
It's about 2 periods of adulthood. And I think that there is something about the way he thinks about memory that sort of misses the mark for me, because I think that somehow he thinks there is a true version of memory. Like, that's what happens in it, is they recover their true memories. Yeah. And I happen to have done some reading about memory and false memory and recovered memory, and memory isn't ever really real, and he doesn't really do a lot. Vera, in a way, has a more like accurate way of dealing with her memory. Even though she's telling herself lies, we're more likely to tell ourselves lies than we are to remember accurately. And I think, again, it's one of those things where like we admire what King is doing, but maybe like there's something a little off about the execution. But because I think one of the things he wants to do here with Dolores is have her be just truly accurate and true.
Yeah.
Like, that is one of her character traits that we're supposed to admire, and I guess we do admire, right? But it is more interesting to me when things get fuzzier for her. Like, one of my very favorite scenes in the book is the actual killing of Joe. Because things do kind of go haywire and get fuzzy, and she doesn't remember things, and she has trouble, and that's also almost a supernatural area, not just because of her vision, that connects to Gerald's game, but that whole part of it. And one of the things I love about Stephen King that I feel like he does get right is often people's elaborate plans go awry, right? Like, they have a really good plan and things go wrong in ways that are unexpected. So I don't know. I guess I also wanted to say about the trying too hard note that I made is that there are other parts of this book where I feel like the lyricism just comes so naturally. Mm-hmm. Like when he's talking, there's a part, well, maybe it's not too natural, but there's parts when he's describing the island or describing like how Dolores feels that I'm like, oh yes, that rings true to me. And it doesn't feel like he was reaching,
Yeah.
It feels like he's just got like a bead on it.
Yeah. You go, Lara.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for talking.
Don't be a bitch, Lara.
Yeah, I've got to channel a little bit of inner Dolores and be like, yeah, well, frig ya. Anyway, I'll stop. Just that, I don't know. Like, I had flagged that passage, and it was another one I wasn't sure what to do with. But I do think that in some ways I felt this book was incredibly, incredibly sad. Like, it left, for starters, like, the main thing I was left with was just, like, an incredible feeling of despair when I read it. And I do think that theme of memory and trying to tell this story and trying to be accurate and trying to sum up your life, because, like, she talks at some point about the house and the life going out of it, like that, like, this chapter on your life is closed and the time is now to talk about it. There's something just incredibly sad about that feeling, and I don't know if it's just resonating with me right now as I'm, like, sitting inside my house for an indefinite period of time, reflecting on my life and, like, wondering if anything will ever be the same. I don't know, but I found that very compelling. But I agree. I don't know if he completely nails it or if it was what he was trying to achieve, but I think that made it. I don't know. It was rich emotional soil for me. But I do think it became the most interesting when in the killing scene and in the scenes with Vera and her nightmares and her dust bunnies and things, that I think those are the most interesting moments. But I do think memory as a theme here is really compelling.
Well, I think also, I like what you said, Lara, about being left with this feeling of sadness. A big difference for me between these characters and characters in King's more supernatural work is that they're going to extreme lengths for such small goals, right? Like, Dolores has to kill her husband. I believe she has to kill her husband in this just so she can survive and so her kids won't get abused. I mean, that's not that's a significant goal, but that's much different than, we have to we have to find the tower so reality doesn't collapse in on itself, right? And so it is sad in its way. Like, oh man, they really do. The characters have to go to such extremes just to exist, and that makes me sad. I mean, even though, I mean, arguably the book does have kind of a happy ending, it is sort of like, to what end, And and thinking about COVID and right now, it's like I feel like my goals have gotten much smaller in a weird way. Since finishing grad school, like, my goal right now is like, oh man, it would be really nice just to be able to go to a movie theater or have a drink with friends at a bar, right? And which was much different than what I wanted before all this happened. So I don't know, just what you're saying about being left with this wave of sadness, despite the book having kind of a happy ending, resonates with me.
Well, the idea of an absolute truth too is I'm really chewing on that, Anna, because, like, that to me is something I always appreciate in literature or art as well, is the fuzziness of memory. And it makes me wonder, like, is one of the things that maybe hinders this book the idea that King is presenting us with someone who is bringing an absolute truth. And it does make you wonder, like, should we be trusting everything she's saying? And I was reading some of the quotes or some other recaps and reviews, and talking about how evil Joe is, and is it like, well, is he that bad because we're only getting it through her perspective, and are we seeing the monster view of him because it's so filtered through her lens? But the thing is, as a whole, I don't get that view. I get the view that King is writing this and that, nearly every word she says is to be trusted. Yeah. And I think that is where it hurts things a little bit. And perhaps why King doesn't always write from the first person like he does, because he really does like to, jump around to different characters to show different perspectives and to show different ways that people are all reacting to one single event and pointing out different things about it. And so maybe that's one thing that maybe feels a little inauthentic, especially in the larger realm of King, is that we're being given a narrator who is also a character who sort of has this omniscience, like that we are supposed to trust everything that Dolores says. Mm-hmm. And I think that sort of based on everything you guys have been saying, that's sort of what I'm pulling is maybe something that hurts the book rather than helps it. You know what I mean? So
I think that's a really good insight, because it's true that in other books, when he jumps around, he's able to shade some of his evil characters a little bit. Yeah. You know, like you get a little bit of like why they are that way, and maybe their own motivations are not so evil. Like a trash can man just jumped to mind.
Yeah.
Whereas in this book, like one of the notes I made for myself is that when he creates a bad guy, sometimes like they can't just be bad, they have to be racist. Like
Accurate.
Yes.
every single one of his bad guys, if they're genuinely bad, is also a terrible racist. Like I think it would be funny if once in his books, like someone was terrible but had the right politics.
Yes, that would be fascinating.
Oh, man, that's a great point. I'm trying to think if there's anyone like that. That's such a good observation about.
I don't think so, because even in his
or they're evangelical Christians.
Yeah.
That's also like
because I feel like in his later
very
books
firm
too,
about
like I don't know, Anna, have you read like The Institute or any of sort of the?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, like some of those later ones, like it there is sort of a political divide as well between the good and the bad that I find interesting. So I think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, Under the Dome is like that. Yeah, that's it. Well, and yeah, going out of their way, and I guess you could argue, especially when some of these books are written, were written, there was just a lot more casual racism in the air, and obviously racism is still a thing. So maybe it's like, but yeah, he really does double down on some of his villains of like, I'm just gonna make them the like, biggest piece of shit imaginable.
Joe would be bad enough, right?
Yeah.
Like
without talking about school segregation.
Didn't make him a racist. He would still be pretty bad. And that's actually one of the places where I feel like he kind of falls short in, or again, falls short is a weird way to put it, but like where his portrait of an abusive relationship has like just doesn't work for me quite, is that a lot of men in abusive relationships, like this is going to sound terrible, but you know, they're not pure evil. And that's one of the problems in our world, right? Like I was reading this great thread on Twitter from a woman that studies, sexual assault and sexual violence. And she was sort of pinging off of the Joe Biden situation. We don't have to get into that, but she had an interesting thing to say, which is that oftentimes students in her classes, when she asks what's the most important thing you heard from me, they say that there is beyond a doubt someone in my life that I love is also a sexual assailant. You know, that and that is the tragedy of sexual violence, is that they aren't all evil, right? Yeah. That someone can be someone that is loved by other women, loved by the people in their life, and also has done terrible things. And I think King gets that, and in other books he gets at that in a way that feels more true, but in this book it's just such a like cartoonish characterization of an abusive relationship.
And it's interesting because the stuff with Selena still like loving her dad despite what he did, you know, it was kind of like, why, you know, like they didn't show any of the things that would have justified that or made her, you know, I would have been like, fuck yeah, Mom, thank you for killing the literal monster that like haunted the halls of our home, you know. But yeah, versus if he had done some good things for the family or like had, you know, stood up for her in school, or I don't fucking know. I'm just trying to think of like character traits, you know, that he could have had that would have justified that feeling a little bit more textually.
Well, even thinking about going back to The Shining, I mean, Jack Torrance is someone who I think in the book, not so much the movie, but in the book, he very much, I think King does a great job of showing the good qualities of him and that he can be a good person. And I mean, and he breaks his kid's arm in that book. I mean, it's really extreme, but like he feels to me, and like you were saying, Anna, I mean, just thinking about the people who I know who have been in abusive relationships. Yeah, the partner usually was not someone who I would have guessed would have done that, and also was not someone who was walking around grabbing ass and saying the N-word and throwing bottles against the wall. Like, you know, and yeah, I have had the pleasure of not knowing a Joe Claiborne, or I guess what is that?
Joe St. George.
Joe St. George.
Yeah, Joe St. I mean,
although she made him into Joe Claiborne, if you know what I mean. I'm sorry, I don't know what this is.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, that is a really good point. And I guess on the other hand, not that there aren't really externally vile people who also abuse.
Yeah, of
others,
course. Yeah.
But yeah, in the King canon, usually the villains tend to be like villains with a capital V, like that.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting idea that we've discussed a lot on the pod is the idea of the all-consuming king villain, the villain who is not just evil but sort of anointed with evil, and it's to me an interesting aspect of King that sometimes works. Obviously I'm a Henry Bowers stan, but and sometimes doesn't.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher. Look.
I think this is a good opportunity to move on to structure and format, which is, a section that sometimes we're like, it's just a King book, he bounces around between people. But I think in this case, I think this is why we have this section in the book, is because every now and then he does do something new and structures his book in a way that really defies his previous work. So I guess, but this is obviously also a very polarizing aspect of this book. Grady Hendrix, the horror author, in his Stephen King revisitation he did for Tor, which we've quoted a few times on the pod over the last several years, he went really hard about how much he hated the dialect in this book, and I thought this quote was interesting and something to discuss, so I'm going to knock it out here. He said, "Writing dialect feels patronizing to me, something that educated whites use to depict those that they regard as their inferiors. It's a way to insert class and snobbery in a book while pretending not to be doing any such thing, a way to other a human being through their speech rather than their appearance." He was writing that specifically in regards to Dolores Claiborne, so I'm curious if you had any similar feelings, and if you found that language distracting, absorbing, or did it eventually win you over? So a larger discussion about the language and the idea that this is written in first person, pure dialect, very heavy on that. So
Yeah, ditto, Laura. So I opened this book. I was so excited to be on the podcast. I was so excited to dive in, because now you really have to have me back to talk about Desperation,
yes,
by the way.
Absolutely.
When I opened it up and I started reading and it was in dialect, I immediately started flipping through the rest of it, and I was like, oh shit.
What did I sign up for?
Oh my god, the whole thing. And I started wondering, it was kind of distracted, I started wondering about the poor copy editor of this book.
Yeah.
Having to go through and do search and replace for idea to make it idea,
did you leave a G on a gerund?
Yeah, right. And I also thought, what the fuck, did he do this on a dare? Is it one of those books where you can't use the word E, or the letter E? And wow, just what Hendrix said too, I guess. I think he does this a lot. And again, King means so well. We love him because he means well. But one of the things I thought of, my ex-husband actually, I think, coined the term Hicksploitation, which is what I thought of when I was doing this. I know what he's going for here. And he comes from Hickdom, right? That's his story. So I don't think it's quite, condescending is too strong a word,
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel natural at all.
Yeah.
Even though I guess it might be. This is his own history. I'm sure this is the way his mom talked. I am positive.
Yeah,
I guess I'm trying to think of go ahead.
Well, that's a tough one for me, because I did not. I liked the. I was actually daunted by the lack of chapters, because that's just an easy way for me to know when to stop reading a book. So I was like, shit, this is gonna be hard to not read in one sitting. As far as the dialect goes, I don't know. I think the Guardian dude's coming down a little hard on it for this. I totally agree that King, usually when he writes different races, he can succumb to that. And I like the term Hicksploitation, but yeah, I think where for me it does seem a little justifies that this is where he's come from. And I guess part of me is like, oh, this isn't how people talk. But then I'm like, well, I don't know. I've literally never been around working class Maine people, so maybe it is how they talk. And who am I to? I guess I'm hesitant to throw that accusation at him, just because I'm like, well, he does come from this, you know what I mean? And I don't know that I think also the main folksiness, which I know is a word we use a lot in this podcast, it's become just such a marker for King's work for me. It just seems like and I agree that maybe it's not natural, but also just to me seems like almost like a distinct style for him. So I don't know. I was not bothered by the monologue aspect of this at all. But what about you, Lara? I don't know if you feel differently.
Just that, I mean, I'm kind of torn exactly between what the two of you just said, because I am aware that he is from Maine and this is kind of his thing, and it's hardly the first character to speak that way. But yeah, staring down the barrel of an entire book where every single sentence is like, oh yeah, horses. I've got all these horses. Like I'm not going to be able to stop talking that way in my own head and to my dog. Where am I going with this? Oh, I just also thought it would be funny if I tried to write an entire novel in like a South Side Chicago accent.
Right. And Lara, I think that's what you just said there is, I think, part of it. Because, like, look at Judd in Pet Sematary, right? Like, that's a character who has those sort of affectations in his speech, but they don't overwhelm him, you know? Mm-hmm. And when you watch, like, and I think that's one of the reasons we love Fred Gwynne so much in Pet Sematary is he nails it, because there's a casualness to it. It's something that is baked into the way he speaks rather than something that typifies every sentence that he speaks. And I think that when I read this book, I don't mind the dialect so much as it feels like amped up to 11, you know? It's like nobody, I think that there are no moments when like that. I think it should be more like when you're incorporating that kind of dialect and that kind of the cartoonishness of the dialect, it should be used for flavor, not as sort of the baseline of the way this character speaks.
Well, and also imagine if Pet Sematary was written entirely from Judd's point of view. It would be hard book to get through. I mean, I guess it would get weird when Gage came back and then he just gets cut off. But yeah,
I would
that little boy.
That would be a fun exercise.
Oh, my Achilles heel hurts so much. And I don't know. I think it is. Yeah, I mean, although it's weird, the dialect didn't bother me at all, really. But I can also see a world where it's like, oh man, do I want to be with this for 300 pages? You know, that's the other side of that. And that's going to vary from person to person.
Yeah, and I think that's just sort of the tough thing is it's the pervasiveness of it, and the fact that it starts to feel like a stunt after a while, like he's challenging himself to keep it up rather than something that sort of punctuates certain moments. And but I will say that if there's one thing that it reminded me of, and I was thinking a lot about this while I was reading this book, is I was thinking about, why do I love Stephen King? Why has he been my favorite writer since I was, so young? And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, I grew up spending so much of my life, and especially when I was in college later, because this helped, crystallize it later, and why I hung on to my love of King even as I got into, the great literary masters. But it's because King has always written about people from underprivileged backgrounds or poor backgrounds, or people who live in small towns and aren't, don't have silver spoons in their mouths. I think that so much literature that we read is about the rich, and it's about the privileged, because these are the people who usually have the connections to get books published, and so they're writing about their own lives. Yes. And so what I've always loved about King was that he wrote about communities that felt similar to mine. I mean, I didn't grow up in abject poverty, but I didn't grow up horribly well off. So I always loved that King was writing about characters who came from not so refined backgrounds. Like, these aren't characters who go to Ivy League schools, which was never a possibility for someone like me. And so it's to me, I will say that as much as I think that the language is cartoony, it does sort of help me remember that it's nice not to be reading about characters from New York City for once. You know what I mean? Even though Selena does go on to be a very successful magazine writer in New York City, which is so funny because, I just think about the state of journalism today, and I'm just like, oh man, I wish I could go back to that era. So yeah, anyways, it's interesting to hear these different sort of ideas. And yeah, I'm interested too, like we talked about the dialect a little bit, but how about the idea that this is a monologue and there's no chapter breaks? Dan, you mentioned that was daunting for you. Anna, Lara, was that maybe not distracting, but daunting for you, the idea that there was no chapter breaks and we're sort of on this ride?
I mean, yeah. I mean, once you open it up and you realize what you're in the middle of, you're like, all right, here we go, motherfucker. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was interesting. If it had been any longer of a book, I would have been like, oh, please no. But it didn't bother me terribly. I think it's kind of like some of the issues we're picking up on are kind of a result of that choice. But I also realize, like, once as an author, once you make a choice like that, you gotta see it through. So I don't really know. It's kind of a double-edged sword in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think the dialect was a much bigger problem for me.
Sure.
Than the fact it was a monologue. Although there was a little bit of when he... Like, there are no chapter breaks, but she does ask for a drink of water or a shot of Jim Beam.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
she does, there's like a weird way that he, it's like in Rope when Alfred Hitchcock will go behind a door or a pillar in order to change the, reel. And make it still seem like it's continuous.
Yes. A bit of sleight of hand. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I feel like I noticed those breaks because it is hard to believe. I guess there's a part of me that's like, really? Like, this goes on for, like, how long would it take to read this? Like,
they just did that. Andy Serkis, I think it was today or yesterday, was reading The Hobbit out loud in one sitting, and it was going to take 12 hours.
Oh my God.
It would be so funny if, like, I mean, I guess it'd have to be Kathy Bates. I don't know. Did the same thing with Dolores Claiborne, but just as a monologue, just to see how long it took her during quarantine.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like I was thinking that constantly or whatever, but I did think that the very intentional breaks were kind of funny. Like, they were his nod to, like, well, I guess she couldn't sit there and talk for, all this time.
Not a single pee break after all that Hawaiian punch.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, that's it's churlish to look for, like, maybe too much accuracy in a King story. On the other hand, one of the things I love about King is that he usually gets the day-to-day details right. Like, that's what genre writers have to do most of the time. If you want to have, monsters and vampires, or even, I guess, the kind of monsters that are in this book, you have to get the other details right. And he does get, I mean, I hope we do spend some time with the caretaking part of the Vera Dolores relationship. But, like, I was talking to a friend of mine who used to be a home health aide, and she was like, yep, like, that sounds right to me, so.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, a good transition into talking about the characters and sort of the relationship. So let's move on to a section we call Heroes and Villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
Well, now that I've had a nip of Jim Beam, let's talk about Heroes and Villains. This is a section where we discuss characters that stood out. And you know what? It's always nice to go into Heroes and Villains knowing we don't have a Stand or Needful Things typecast ahead of us. It's nice when the books have, a nice trim group of characters for us to discuss. So I guess we can start. I think, actually, based on what you said, Anna, it might be good to start with Vera and Dolores, since that's sort of where we start. And maybe start with Vera specifically. What is it that you would say appeals about this character or, repels about this character? What would you say really stands out in terms of what this character represents in the larger book? How about you, Dan?
I thinking about the caretaking aspect, it was funny because, well, when we get to Pound Cake, I was like looking for stuff to mention. I was going to mention all the shit talk, but then I was like, no, that's actually pretty accurate, I think. I mean, from people I know who are home care workers, and my mom did that in college at a assisted living home, and I kind of love that King uses both just the nasty day-to-day chores to connect them, but then also uses this great thematic thing, like you were saying about having lived hard lives and having had to do, murder their husbands, I guess, And Vera to me, this might be a weird thing to say. I almost didn't. The only thing that I had a problem with her character was that she was kind of making up these lies about connecting with her children. I don't know. That kind of undercut her for me a little bit. Just sort of this living in this la fantasy land. I mean, we see her succumb to some pretty, severe. What does she have? Alzheimer's or dementia? Did they ever confirm what it is or not?
Just strokes. I thought she had a series of strokes that
I don't know why. I don't know why. For some reason, that bothered me that she had been making up these stories about her children. Maybe it just undercut how much I liked her grit and her strength. But then again, that's something that happens in real life. But yeah, I think their relationship to me, especially because it starts off with her us thinking that Dolores maybe killed her. Although that's funny too, because she was going to kill her, right? Like that's what's funny to me too, that like it's not like that was completely made up. I think because we start off thinking the relationship is one thing, and then it just kind of deepens and deepens and deepens over the book. I mean, that was just so juicy for me to read. Sorry, I know I jumped around to like 4 different thoughts there, but what say the rest of you?
Wow, I actually have a lot of thoughts. So I did come to really care for Vera. I think I'm going to make a distinction between like and care for. And that's one of the things I like about the book, actually, is the intensity of the love between these two women, but the fact that they kind of can't stand each other either. But the respect, too. And I did make a note to myself a couple of different places that I think Vera might have OCD.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's intentional or not, but that gave me a little bit of sliver of like a crack in her character that widens, let's say. That she starts as a very like well put together, literally woman. And then her life begins to be disorganized and her brain kind of follows. And okay, so I said we're gonna have to talk about our moms, but my mom had passed away like 8 years ago, and she had dementia towards the end and was in a nursing home. And I don't want to get too maudlin about this, but there were times she didn't recognize me, and she would spin these elaborate fantasies. It was actually kind of weirdly impressive. Like, I mean, she was always an imaginative, like clever, interesting person. And I was reminded of that. Like when I was reading the sections of Vera, when she's caught up in her fantasies, that there is this weird, like, it's almost like lucid dreaming or something. There's a lucidity to the fantasy, that, I don't know, like I sort of remembered the big reveal as I was reading, but I was kind of watching for how realistic it would be. And I don't know, like, I think it kind of works. Like, I think her desperation and her sadness and her grief, like, do break her.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it worked too. I mean, it's exactly the exact feelings I had, because, if you just look at the surface actions of her character, and if this was someone I knew from a distance, I'd be like, fuck this person. She abuses her staff. She's, but as you get to know her and as you see behind the veil of what's going on with her, you can't help but just love her in a very sort of familial way. And I do think the depiction of the caretaker stuff and her like worsening mental state rang true to me as well.
Ana, can I ask you a question real quick? Just having experience with that, and because this was your introduction to the book, were you picking up on that that these were elaborate fantasies before the big reveal happens?
It just sort of became clearer, let's say. Like, I feel like the eclipse buildup was when I was like, like it was a grandiose. There was like a grandiosity to her plans that made me think like there's something off.
Yes.
And so then when the big reveal happened, like I was sort of prepared. And one thing I did not like was when Dolores is putting it together and she all of a sudden is like, oh, she read those romance novels.
Yes, that felt very like, what?
Yeah, that was kind of weird. That was like Usual Suspects.
It's the Usual Suspects scene, like.
Yes.
I always feel like King does. I always, when we talked about The Stand, the book episodes, I always talked about Detective Larry Underwood or Inspector Underwood, where he's like he's doing this like very rudimentary detective work about Harold and all that stuff. And King does that a lot, and I actually think he does it in his in all the Holly Gibney, Bill Hodges stuff too, which kind of sucks because those are supposed to be compelling mysteries, and I'm like, man, this isn't like that. This is just going like, but yes, then I noticed the mole was changing, and you're like, and it's he always goes in those like detective work passages that are always kind of funny to me.
And I don't know, were we going to talk about the shit scene yet? Like,
Let's talk about the shit scene.
Because, okay, so I personally have like a real like aversion to kind of bodily humor and bodily horror and all that. And when I first started reading that scene, I was like, oh shit, maybe I should fast forward through this because this is going to gross me out. And then not only did I kind of come to see it not as like maybe this is supposed to be funny, I guess, but also he's doing something here. Like this is not happening just for the sake of indulging in some like the pie eating contest bullshit, right? Like there is a reason he's doing this. And this is actually the part where I asked a friend of mine who'd been a home health aide about it. And she was like, oh yeah, like and this is also, it reminded me of my mom too. Like when you are powerless, when you are that powerless, like anything that you can exert control over, like any way that you can remind people of your agency, you're going to do. Like, even if that's being a bitch, even if that means like doing something that you would normally in your right mind not do because it's like super gross. And like, again, like the idea of Vera, who's like this well-dressed, glamorous character, like resorting to this, I think it's just a sign again of like grasping at agency. And that's sort of the way I came around on it. Like, and especially after talking to my friend, I was like, all right, yeah, like, good job.
Yeah. It really was hard to find because like I was like, oh shit talk, yeah, here we go, lots of pound cake. But yeah, I wrote down like just a couple phrases Dolores used, but I actually couldn't find much because it did feel realistic and it felt totally justified and just as integral to their relationship as all the stuff when Vera still has more cognizance about it.
No, just that like occasionally I feel like he does really do his research and really and this is one of those cases where I felt like he maybe was talking to some people or he's had an experience with it. I don't actually know, with caring for someone in this situation, because I had the exact same trajectory of like, are we going to really get into this? And then it was like, wait, no, this is relevant to the themes of the story. So that was it. That was the thought.
Yeah, I think because like I was laughing at first because he's using phrase like, I have it here, the dirty old bag had her a shit savings account.
Yes, it's the way he talks about things. You're like, okay.
I kind of love it.
And then he says she'd crank up her tired old fudge factory and that shit account of hers started paying dividends. I was like laughing my ass off, but I was also like, this is going in pound cake. But then I think what it is that it gives you sort of a welcome, like there's a grossness to it and there's a frustration to it, but there's also a humor to it because it culminates in this elaborate plan with the vacuum cleaner with Dolores and sort of this way of catching her, and in a weird way it sort of brings them together because it's like they're each trying to get one over on the other, and then I think in a weird way they both sort of respect the shit. The stuff
and it's
of
like
the other.
It's like the events I have no problem with it, and they make total sense of the story. And I'm someone, I mean, as we know, I don't have a huge aversion to bodily dick and fart and shit jokes and all that stuff. But I was still, some of the phrasing Dolores is using to talk about it. I have one that I'll save for pound cake. Yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't know. It rides that fine line between like just king being king and it being a little bit too much, but he uses the word fudge to describe shit so much in his books. Like in The Body, they're like, oh, you turn your shorts into a Hershey's fudge factory. Another one I remember that Mike brought from Dr. Sleep, and it's when the True Knot is talking about that old guy, I can't remember his name now, Grandpa something, when they're talking about how he's dying. And I think the reason it sticks out is because it's during a solemn part. They're like, Grandpa can't hold his fudge anymore. And you're just like, ew, stop it. It's so gross. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, it's funny, and like, but then I enjoy this bit too because it shows that King is sort of aware of the playfulness of it that is rooted in kind of weird pathos. But Dolores says, Nancy, quit biting the insides of your cheeks. Better to let it out and bear the shame than hold it in and bear the pain, as they say. Besides, it does have its funny side. Shit always does. Ask any kid. I can even let it be a little funny to me now that it's over, and that's something, ain't it? No matter how big a jam I'm in, my time of dealing with Vera Donovan shit Thursdays is over. And I don't know, I just found that very charming. And in sort of its weird twisted way, but yeah, it's like I will say too that that I was like, once you get past sort of the darkness of the Joe murder and the follow-up and everything, man, it's like there's almost this weird what's the word I'm looking for? There's sort of like a quiet rapture in sort of the connection that we see between Vera and Dolores, which has been hinted at previously, but it really sort of sparkles to life in those passages where we see the true understanding that passes between two women, even when it's employer and employee, and class divides and all these various divides, and they're sort of drawn together in just this sense of like womanhood and I think that, and just all the scenes that we get to see where, Dolores is in bed crying with her or helping her fend off the wires or the dust bunnies, like those things to me, and those were really unnerving to me because I've had loved ones in my life who have had hallucinations in that manner and have seen things. And I think all you can really do in those moments is hold the person and be there for them and just kind of say like, it's not real. I'm here with you. You're safe, and just to see those very real, very human moments where Dolores, who is much more than a housekeeper and a caretaker here, she is somebody who is helping ward off the sort of evil things that are encroaching upon this one. And I think that level of kinship is inspiring and kind of beautiful, and something that I think makes the tougher sections of this book worth it.
So two things I want to add. One is that I think King either does have like someone who's a help aide in his life or has just paid really close attention, because there's also Danny in Dr. Sleep who does, I think does a great job of like portraying his attitude and the way he does his work, and I think also cleans up shit at some point. And then actually I was trying to think, when you talked about holding someone and telling them it's not real, you made me think of, isn't there a scene in The Outsider where they say, don't tell the kid it's not real? Like, except, and I was thinking, like, that's also what I think one of the nurses told me about my mom, was not to argue with her.
Yes, you have to, you're supposed to acknowledge, and that's what Dolores does. She like goes and like snips the wires, and it's like, that's it. You don't, you never argue with the delusions. That's what I remember. You just acknowledge it, and then you kind of go with it, and then that helps calm them down, because if you deny their reality, then it's like anyone telling you to calm down or that's not real. Like the piss.
And isn't
off,
that in The Outsiders or The Outsider? Like, where I think I just watched the miniseries where the children of, I'm so bad with names, even fictional names.
Of Glory.
Yeah, and they think they're seeing The Outsider. And she's arguing with them, and then the detective's wife comes and says, Mayor Winningham comes and says, when our kid used to have nightmares, we found that the best thing to do was to just say, not to say it's not real, but to say, like, you'll protect them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think my own experience colored my interpretation of the text there.
If it bleeds, we can kill it. Probably my favorite line from Predator. Classic Arnold. Well, now it might be my favorite Stephen King book. What's that you say? Yes, Stephen King has a new book, or rather a novellas collection. It's called, you guessed it, If It Bleeds, and features 4 different stories. One's about a rat, another one's about a man who contains multitudes, there's a cell phone with an afterlife, and even Holly Gibney joins in on the phone. And if you're like us, you'll probably just imagine Cynthia Erivo in the role the entire time. That's a reference to HBO's The Outsider. I didn't kill that kid, Ralph, but you will read this book. After all, we have nothing but long days and pleasant nights ahead of us. Ooh, can't wait. So, what are you waiting for, constant listeners? Grab a copy of If It Bleeds, the latest from Cy King. 4 novellas, creepy tales, Holly Gibney, you can't lose. Get it now, wherever books are sold. Hasta la vista, baby.
I will say that there are moments where I kind of love the moments where Dolores digs into the origins of them, and first seeing him in study hall and being drawn to his forehead and sort of the early dates and things like that, and the sense that he was never a different person. He was always sort of Joe, but there is this effort made on King's part to show whatever it was that, first sparked something between them is something that Dolores never really forgot. And I think, too, when she talks about him dying, and she mentions several times she never wanted him to suffer. And I think that those are interesting moments that help, show a portrait of whatever hell has been put through. The origins of love sometimes, they never really quite go away. And that's just a theme that I'm always very very susceptible to, the idea of how we get from A to Z. There's a really beautiful David Gordon Green movie called Snow Angels with Sam Rockwell and Kate Beckinsale. I don't know if I'd recommend it. It's one of the most depressing movies I've ever seen, but that entire movie is about the idea of how young love curdles into something much, much, much darker, and what that journey is like. And Sam Rockwell has a moment near the end of that movie that just utterly breaks me, where he's sort of like, remembering the beginnings as he's embroiled in the tragedy of the end. And I think that for me, whatever humanization did come to Joe, it came from the idea that he was once young and once in love with her. And that's obviously not to explain or excuse any of the character's behavior, but it's the idea. It did help me see him as a human and not simply a monster. So, what other thoughts did you guys have about Joe, and areas that you struggled with that character, or maybe found yourselves compelled by the character?
It's funny because I'm thinking now. I don't know. I'm like torn on Joe because I'm thinking a lot about what Ana said about how King tends to depict this kind of villain. And contextually, that makes Joe a hard sell for me, right? Because we've just seen so many King villains that get taken to the outer limits of scumminess, and that's not to say that there are not abusive people who are like that. Like Joe does feel kind of realistic in that regard to me, but among all the other King villains, I wonder if I would have had a little bit of an easier time with him. And I think he, in a way, maybe would have been scarier to me had he been someone who was more charming on the surface, or maybe we saw him be empathetic toward people in some area of his life. But I mean, I'm trying to think other than those high school parts, and there's this brief section on page 180 that I want to talk about, word processor of the gods. We don't really see him be positive toward anyone, like in any area of his life, right? And so I almost wonder if he would be a more affecting villain if we did see that. But like I said, that's almost like retroactive because of what Ana said earlier. So that's just sort of what's going through my head right now.
I'm having the same struggle. I'm also thinking about the father in Gerald's game, not to keep, and I know that might be frustrating if you hadn't, don't have it quite so fresh in your mind as I do. But, we get more time with the men in Jesse's life. We don't necessarily, with the dad, for example, get much more in terms of like his backstory or why he is the way he is, which I also can find. That's another double-edged sword for me in terms of villains. You don't want to go as far as like the origin story of Hannibal Lecter, where he's like training to be a samurai or something, but like where it's like, okay, please don't do this. But we get is more time with him and sort of like working through his own, why he did what he did to his daughter and how he reacts to it. Because there's this terrible scene in Gerald's game where he basically, after molesting her, he convinces her to never tell another soul. And he does it in this incredibly passive-aggressive way where he leads her down the track of thinking like it's her fault and not his fault. And it's just the way he emotionally manipulates her. We get a lot of time with him, and seeing how his mind works, and so you understand him more, and you understand, I mean, he is absolutely a villain, and I could be wrong, but I don't think we get all the flourishes of him being just like a racist asshole or whatever. I think he's sort of like just a normal dud of a guy, just being a dad, and then he, just does this horrible thing that fractures the family and fractures Jesse forever. We just get to see how pathetic he is, and that he's not just this like guy that's being evil to be evil. Whereas in Dolores, we just see through a secondhand telling, or a third hand, because it's what Selena is saying to Dolores and Dolores is saying to us of like, well, he did the X, Y, and Z, and you don't get much more of it other than he was just a dirty old man. You don't get that real psychological. I don't know. I'm trailing off now. I think you know what I'm saying.
No, it makes sense. It makes, because I reread Gerald's game right before this, and the dad in that, and Gerald to an extent, we at least see them how in the we at least see how in the community they are viewed as something different, right, than just the dirty old man or whatever else. Like you get the idea that they're kind of well liked. I know I'm like contradicting myself now because I'm like, oh, King never does that. But I think also because I totally see what you're saying with that. Because even Gerald, we get this idea of, he's this successful lawyer that some people tend to like, and we can see him be charismatic and generous to people. And I wonder with Joe, like, even if we just took out the race stuff, I wonder if that would go a long way to helping that.
I don't know. I mean, like, he's pretty. Yeah, he's pretty vile.
He does all that manipulative AA stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was which, I mean, it happens probably, but it's. I mean, I guess I said sort of almost all the stuff I want to say, and like ditto to a lot of what Lara said. I wish that there had been some more moments of tenderness or moments why you fall in love with an abusive person, because people fall in love with abusive, partners all the time and stay in love with them. Mm-hmm. And she just has none of that kind of from the word go. And he sort of puts it in the context of the time and also economics about why she stays. But she's such a strong woman. Like, there's a part of me that's like, really? Like, it takes him molesting your daughter to walk away? Like,
right.
Yeah, I've got this section here where it is sort of one of the few moments where she digs into sort of the internal reasons for why she chose to marry him. It's pretty early on in the book. She says, she said, sitting out on the stairs today by the East Head, thinking over those old times, that was damned hard work. It was the first time I saw that I might have sold myself cheap, and maybe I did it because I thought cheap was the best the likes of me could expect to get for herself. I know it was the first time I dared to think that I deserved to be loved more than Joe St. George could love anybody, except himself, maybe. You mightn't think a hard-talking old bitch like me believes in love, but the truth is it's just about the only thing I do believe in. It didn't have much to do with why I married him, though. I gotta tell you that straight out. I had 6 weeks worth of baby girl in my belly when I told him I did, and I would, until death do us part, and that was the smartest part of it. Sad but true. The rest of it was all the usual stupid reasons, and one thing I've learned in my life is that stupid reasons make stupid marriages. I was tired of fighting with my mother. I was tired of being scolded by my father. All my friends was doing it. They was getting homes of their own, and I wanted to be a grown-up like them. I was tired of being a silly little girl. He said he wanted me, and I believed him. He said he loved me, and I believed that too. And after he'd said it and asked me if I felt the same for him, it only seemed polite to say I did. That last line is the one that really gets me, is that idea of being polite, and that's something that I've talked about with my wife a lot. Like, not in our
Randall, Randall St. George over here.
But no, like, I think just when in larger conversations, when you get into sort of the nuances of Me Too and things along that nature, is the general ideas of pressures that women felt to not upset the person, to not upset a man or somebody that you will have a relationship with, and especially when you're young. And I think that is a moment of insight that at least resonated with me sort of when we're thinking about youth and love. So
that whole section I thought was one of the stronger sections in terms of it, it resonating or feeling true, because that absolutely resonated with me, and that feeling of like not believing that you deserve any better, even if that's something that's subconscious, I think really resonated with me in the way that I've, now that I've had time to reflect on my many failed relationships, it just is like, I really was selling myself short, and you can be really strong in areas of your life, but have a total blind spot when it comes to romantic relationships. At least that's something I've really had to face about myself, and so I did find that passage really affecting. I don't know, now that we're having this conversation, I guess I didn't think about it that as deeply as this conversation is making me do, but I don't know that it is completely sold in the rest of the text, but I did really love that passage.
Yeah, I think that's what my position would be too, is that I think I completely get, and it rings true, like that passage. It's sort of, he's taken a snapshot of the moment when an insecure woman agrees to marry, a jerk. But that insecure young girl, there's like a disconnect that isn't necessarily untrue, right? Like that insecure 18-year-old can become Dolores Claiborne, but we don't see that becoming.
Right.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. Right. I agree with that. Yeah, and then I guess as we wrap up heroes and villains, it could be good to talk a little bit about Selena, who is a character that again, like, this is the kind of instance where I almost feel like we're hampered somewhat in our connection to Selena because we're only viewing her through the eyes of Dolores, and I feel like, you know, when it comes to recognizing trauma and things of that nature, I feel like we sort of get broad indicators, but we don't get a lot of insight into what Selena was actually going through. And so, like, I mean, having to deal with her dad in that sense. But is this a character that you felt, and I haven't seen the film, but considering that they cast Jennifer Jason Leigh in it, it makes me feel like they maybe elaborated on that character more in the film. And that's something we can discuss next week with the film, obviously. But it makes me wonder, and it is something I would like to see, because the character for me was interesting, but also felt very distant, I'd say. So how did you guys feel about Selena?
Yeah, and you're totally right. In the film, actually, I mean, I feel like the core relationship of the movie is because they add this kind of framing device that, and Jennifer Jason Leigh's character has a much more active role in Dolores's interrogation and trial. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely didn't. It's tough because I feel like Selena in the book, because we just see it through Dolores's eyes, we almost just see her as this victim of abuse who then becomes a writer later on, right? Like we don't. I feel like we don't really get a ton. We just don't get a ton of background. Now, I mean, logistically, it doesn't necessarily bother me because of the format of the book and that it's this long rambling monologue. But I am left just wanting to know a little bit more about her. Like, we really don't get to see how she exists outside of the world of abuse, right? Like, I mean, the most dialogue she has in the book is her telling Dolores about what Joe is doing to her. And maybe we could, I don't know, Dolores talks about how their relationship went sour after everything that happened with Joe, and then obviously toward the end they start to mend things a little bit. But I'm almost wondering if King could have gone a little bit further into that through the eyes of Dolores, right? Rather than just summing it up. Like, that's like, I don't. It's not like I dislike Selena as a character, but I think there are ways he could have delved further into who she is through and still kept the same format that he uses with the monologue.
We touched on this before, but I just think the whole book could be improved by making Joe a more like shaded character, because then also Selena would become a little more intelligible, like her devotion to him, right? Which is, we mentioned before, like a little bit of like a raised eyebrow in the book, right? Like in the book, it is simply the moment in which Dolores threatens to kill him, or actually doesn't threaten to kill him, asks him to kill her, right? But I guess it looks like she's threatening to kill him. It's like that moment is the way that Selena and Joe's relationship turns. Like, it's just all traced back to that, and that seems convenient.
Yeah, and it's like there was almost because, like, if you think about what we do know about Joe's character, everything that all the sympathy and the way that he gets people to like him is by being this kind of like hangdog, down on his luck guy, like, oh shucks, you know, poor me. And that is kind of how Selena explains it to her mother, is that he just looked so sad in that moment, and I thought I would make it up to him and bring him like lemonade or whatever. And I think that, like, if we just got a little bit more of that, but it's also like, it feels a little weird for a father-daughter like devotion to be based solely in that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, guys.
Well, would you say, Lara, because we were talking about Jesse's father in Gerald's game, I actually feel like in Gerald's game, they go further into... They go further into how Jessie's relationship with her mom being kind of tense sort of informs her going to her father a lot, which then, of course, evolves into what happens, what we see in both Dolores Claiborne and Gerald's game. And I feel like Gerald's game does a little bit better of a job of that, of really showing the interfamily dynamic and how that could, like, and how two very different relationships with two very different parents can lead to something. And not in most cases, God, hopefully not, right? But, like, I feel like in Gerald's game, like, and also, I'm trying to think how old. I'm trying to think with Jet. You know, it's tough with Jesse. It's different also because the abuse isn't. It's not over a long period of time. It's not systematic.
It's like this one incident.
Yeah, and so and she's older when that happens. I mean, I know they're the same age in the book when the crime in Dolores Claiborne actually happens. But yeah, like Jessie, I think because she's older also, you just buy it a little bit more rather than this like 5-year-old thing in Dolores Claiborne.
Yeah, it's. I do think it's more fully realized. Everything about this, I think is more fully realized in Gerald's Game, but it's also from the perspective of the one who suffered the abuse, and so we also are. The whole structure of Gerald's Game is her being forced to revisit these worst memories of hers when she has no other choice because she's tied to a bed and has to face these things she's been repressing. And I think that just gives you a lot more opportunity to learn more detail and to see her internal world more. And I feel like, you just really end up being very sympathetic to her character. And that's what I was saying earlier about it feeling like, oh, he really does kind of nail that, that point of view in Gerald's Game. And I'm not totally sure because and also Dolores, it's a side effect of she's working all the time. She's trying, she even says like, I'm out of the house for like 12, 13 hours for these shifts cleaning homes. And so she's not around her daughter to see the signs before it's too late or whatever. Yeah, and so you could argue that that's why she feels distant is because they were distant, but then again, it's like, does that work? Does that tell the story the best way it could be told? I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think this is a really good look, and we've obviously touched on a lot of the character stuff sort of in the themes. I mean, this is such a character-based book, but I think it's time to dig a little bit deeper into the stuff that maybe made us laugh, made us angry, made us a little bit scared. We're going to move on to a section we call Misery.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Annie!
Welcome to Misery. This is the section when we break down the stuff that, made us feel like we were locked in Annie Wilkes' cabin with a sledgehammer hanging above our feet. So I only have one here because I think that maybe some of the misery, as Ana was just saying off mic, that maybe certain aspects of this are more not contained in a single block of text, but rather interwoven throughout. But the one part that I will say that I was rolling my eyes out of my brain at was, and if we want to talk about dialects, was the Scottish doctor.
I almost forgot.
I'd actually
How could I forget?
Yeah.
It's like, it's so weird he's Scottish.
But
what does Stephen King have against Scotsmen? Like, it's like kind of.
I know, and he had the line where he goes, "Silly man, will you not shut up?"
It's like fat
Jamaican.
I know, it's like it was an MON, and it cracked me up. It was like mon. I know, and I have horrible accents as well.
Don't throw a joke on the well, man. Just like awful.
So that dialect there was a bit. If the dialect was bad enough, throughout it, having to deal with some crazy drunken Scot was a bit out there as well. So.
I was very curious if anyone had the audiobook, if like it switched over at that point, like was it Dolores doing a Scottish accent? Like, I had a lot of questions.
They bring in Brian Cox
just for Brian Cox to do. Yeah, I mean, he'd actually probably be really good in that. Yeah.
So I did have as I said before, like the vernacular was a problem in general, but I did have one thing marked with just a huge exclamation point on page 164 of my version. Drinkin' brought out the woman in him, and for the woman in Drinkin' brought out the woman in him, and for the woman in Joe, it was always about 2 days before one god-awful gusher of a period.
How did I miss that line? Maybe that was one of the missing pages.
I was going to say, Lara, I like keep waiting for this moment where you're like, wait a minute, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember that, and I feel like I would have also like just died. Maybe it was. What page was it on your edition?
Oh, in my edition, I thought of that too. But it's on 164 in mine, and she was talking about working at Vera's.
I feel like, because mine was like right before the eclipse, you know, and like my edition is almost 400 pages, and you guys said yours was around 300 pages. Yeah, so I'm very curious if that was on a missing page.
Gusher of a period,
funny.
Man. No woman talks like that. No
Gusher.
woman
I know.
talks like that.
What the hell?
I'm thinking of like the fruit candies gusher. Just that word in general is like a weird term. I'm just saying, like, and just hearing that word is like unpleasant. You know, I'm just like I'm thinking this. And then also. A joke we have in the stand is that Stephen King uses the word dilly like throughout, like, oh, that's a dilly of a this, and Ralph Brentner says, oh, a dilly of a meal, and I'm just picturing him saying like, oh, that was a gusher of a period. It's just like a nasty.
Any other Dan? You said you had a misery, didn't you?
So I think for me, I don't even know if it's like a writing thing or more just I feel like I think sometimes King tries to tidy up his books a little bit too much. Like, for instance, at the end, you know, he has, this is on the very last page before the scrapbook thing. He says, I know who I am, Dolores Claiborne, 2 months shy of my 66th birthday, registered Democrat, lifelong resident of Little Tall Island. That to me feels like a natural enough ending, but then he has like that little paragraph at the end. I guess I want to say two more things, Nancy, before you hit the stop button on that rig of yours. At the end, it's the bitches of the world who abide. And as for the rest of you, the dust bunnies, frig yeah. It seems like
yes,
it's a little bit.
It bothered me too.
Yeah, just like an unnecessary button. And then I don't know, maybe you all feel differently. I didn't love the scrapbook at the end where we hear about Dolores being cleared. And I'm still sort of unclear on how she would actually get cleared of the murder. I mean, she did just confess it, right? But I don't know. Like, cause from the scrapbook, from what I got that even I didn't even get that it was viewed as justifiable homicide. I just got that the rest of the island did not find out about any of this that had happened, which feels weird to me. And then also, it just feels more realistic to me if we're left in this more nebulous place of how Dolores and Selena's relationship ended up. Like, I get the idea that they're starting to mend the fence a little bit, and that they're both well off money wise and everything. It just feels like it puts too much of a bow on it. But did you guys feel that way, or did the scrapbook not bother you?
You know, I noted the scrapbook was the only other thing I noted in Misery here, is just that it felt like a half-assed attempt at being uplifting after a very bleak novel. And I'm like, I would rather, you know, you just swing strong into bleakness versus like, how would Selena suddenly have this come to Jesus moment where she realized she does love her mom and she's going to come back to town? And like, I don't know, it just felt a little, like you said, too much of a bow.
And I would say that and part of me was like, well, if you're going to put a bow on it, have her keep some money. Like, you know, she's portrayed as being like pretty desperately poor. You know, like she deserves a little bit of that $30 million.
Seriously.
Like,
if she had donated $29 million to the Wayward Children of New Jersey or whatever the hell it was called.
Yeah, I would have been happier if she had kept just a little bit and like put it in a college fund for, I don't know, Joe Jr.'s kids or whatever. Like it anyway. I didn't like the scrapbook.
Yeah, I agree.
I think King does that a lot. He'll have this little kind of coda at the end of it. But I do agree with what all of you are saying. Like, even our issues with the vernacular side, I think because King has one consistent voice throughout all this, and it's done in this very singular kind of format, I feel like he actually does avoid some of the pitfalls he normally experiences with. Because I feel like we'll have a lot of really good books, and then there will just be one scene where you're like, what the fuck is this? And I actually feel like he avoids that pretty nicely by being consistent throughout. Yeah, so I didn't have as much misery passages or any really other than those two things as I usually do.
Yeah. Well, I think the clouds are parting, the skies are opening, and I see a word processor of the gods.
And we're gonna make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
Welcome to Word Processor of the Gods. This is the section where we discuss writing we thought was quite good, and usually we can find a little bit even in something like road work. So, what I have one queued up that I'll let you guys prepare yours. But I thought that, even amidst all of and of course, the one I'm looking at doesn't really have much dialect vernacular in it at all. It's actually just a really lovely little passage. But this is one that really stuck out to me as like a really lovely, good piece of writing that also takes advantage of the location, because I think sort of Little Tall Island, when I think about it, is to me a really beautiful kind of location. Like this idea of rocky shores and ocean spray and all that kind of stuff, but I'm gonna read this section. It's on, wait, do I have the pages here? I'm very bad at, I have my Kindle. It's okay, location 1116 on my Kindle. We'll just do that. 30% in. We stood there a while, watching the wake spread back toward the mainland. The sun was on the wester by then, beating a track across the water, and the wake broke it up and made it look like pieces of gold. When I was a little girl, my dad used to tell me it was gold, and that sometimes the mermaids came up and got it. He said they used those broken pieces of late afternoon sunlight as shingles on their magic castles under the sea. When I saw that kind of broken golden track on the water, I always watched it for mermaids, and until I was almost Selena's age, I never doubted there were such things, because my dad had told me there were. And I just love that. I think it's nice writing. It's a nice memory, and it also resonates true for me. There's a few like things that my parents told me, like little fantasies that they told me that were just nice at the time when I was a little kid that, funny enough, I would believe way too old, So, like, I'll always remember, and this deals more with how my parents were terrified to actually speak to me about sex. But my mom, when I asked my mom where babies came from when I was really young, when I asked like how they came out of the body, my mom told me they came out through the belly button. And
oh yeah, that's pretty common. Yeah, and I think a lot of kids are told that.
But I would say that I believe that way too old.
How old are we talking?
I don't think I can reveal it. All I will say is that I said it in front of some people, and it was one of the most mocked days of my entire life. So.
Oh no.
31 years old.
It was last week. But no, so that's one that I have. I have a few others. But what did you guys have any passages that you thought were lovely or well written?
Yes. I have two little ones here. I think you read one of them earlier, and I can't remember now what it was or why, but here's two very short ones just from little different moments in the book. The first one is on page 32 in my edition. In the end, the bright colors always go out of life. Have you ever noticed that? In the end, things always look gray, like a dress that's been washed too many times.
I have that.
I could have said washed, but I chose not to.
I have that in mine as well. That's great.
I don't know. That was just, there's these moments of like little bits of reflecting on life that struck me as really sad and really beautiful. The other one, page 127, and this is, right after she learns what Selena has revealed to her about Joe. I saw his face pretty near all the time after that eye wouldn't close even when my other two did and I was asleep, and I began to know it wouldn't close until he was dead. It was like being in love, only inside out.
Ooh, I
just like
phrase.
that line. Yeah. I feel like I feel that way about Mitch McConnell. Like, that really resonated with me for that reason.
Ew.
I actually had that one that about the boat wake.
Yeah.
Also, and I actually think when she goes to the mainland to get Selena, I think is some of the better writing in the book. It feels very real. Like, that's all of it feels true to me. And there's just one tiny short passage that struck me, and it was such a visceral moment. I don't know. I had to pause. She should have been with her girlfriends, maybe listening to records or mooning over some boy. And instead she was sitting there in the dusty ray of afternoon sun, sitting in the smell of chalk and floor varnish and that nasty red sawdust they put down after all the kids have gone, sitting with her head bent so close over her book that you've thought there were secrets of life and death in there.
That's good.
I've been that kid before, so.
Yeah.
I like the detail, and King gets these kind of very almost pedestrian kind of details so right, like the nasty red sawdust. We all know that, right? Like when you're on the playground too long.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. You go, Dan.
Randall, you mentioned this moment already, but I just wanted to read it out loud. It's on page 181 of the first edition. This is as Dolores is sort of deliberating whether to kill Joe or not. And I think this is because it kind of reconciles what drew her to Joe initially, and then what she has to do. And I, as we said before, I think we long for more moments of like this in the book and this kind of characterization. But I'll just read it. So this is after she's remembering both the good and bad things about him. Well, I had a hole for him, 130 feet deep instead of just 6, and lined with chunks of fieldstone instead of dirt. You bet I had a hole for him. And one kiss after 3 years, or maybe even 5, wasn't going to change it. Neither was touching his forehead, which had been a lot more the cause of all my trouble than his puling little dingus ever was. But I touched I take that. All right, maybe take out the dingus part and we're good. But I touched it again just the same. Traced one finger over it and thought about how he kissed me on the patio of the Samoset Inn while the band played inside Moonlight Cocktail, and how I'd been able to smell his father's cologne on his cheeks when he did. Then it hardened my heart, and then she obviously goes into the murder. And so I think that gives us more of what we long for in the book a little bit, you know, of just, how do you phrase it? Like a shaded villain. And I just like
that scene
back and forth a lot in her own mind. I think that's super effective.
It made me tear up when I read that part. Like, I don't know. It was part of that feeling of, like, how did we get here? Like, you know, just, like, drop in your heart to your knees kind of a moment.
Yeah,
and I didn't know it around the well. I didn't know those were called field stones, so I learned something new. And hey, one of your favorite words, Randall, dingus.
Yeah,
too. I forgot about that part. Yeah.
Cute little dingus.
Yeah, that phrase "harden my heart" is interesting too, and the way it's used, I think, is. I have that written down as well, and I think mainly because. I remember when I first read this book when I was, freshly a teenager, the idea of hardening my heart was a very foreign concept. But now it's like I feel like I have those moments sometimes where there are certain memories perhaps that, while good, are also maybe triggering for me, and things that I just need to, if I don't want to spiral into a certain place, I need to sort of push down. And I feel like there are certain aspects of my life where I've learned I need to harden my heart when my mind goes to a certain place or thinks about a certain person. And I think, obviously, I'm not planning on killing these people, but I do. But I do find that sort of a relatable concept, the idea of that there is a choice sometimes that you make to harden your heart. And I don't know, that's just a little bit of truth that works for me. I have a section here that maybe is better fit for cemetery, but I also have other sections from this, and this is from the well scene. But I have other sections from it that I have in the cemetery as well. So, but I did find this to be an especially evocative image, and it really worked for me. So this is when she shines the flashlight down into the well, which is such a horrifying thing for me. The idea that he's down there and still alive, and she's shining the flashlight in to see what he looks like. The first thing the beam struck was his upturned face, and I screamed. It was a little white circle with 2 big black holes in it. For a second or two, I thought he'd pushed stones into his eyes for some reason. Then he blinked, and it was just his eyes after all, staring up at me. I thought of what they must have been seeing. Nothing but the dark shape of a woman's head behind a bright circle of light. And I love that image, and obviously, whoever was marketing it did too, because that's what ended up on the book cover. But and then a paragraph later, she mentions how he broke most of his ribs when he fell, and they must have been sticking into his lungs on both sides like porcupine quills. That really works for me as well, and it also reminds me of, you mentioned Christine was your first book, Anna. It was one of mine too, but my first relationship with King was sitting in my grandma's basement, as my grandma and my parents would talk upstairs, and she had 3 Stephen King books, and I've talked about this on the pod before, but I would just flip through them and try to find the gory scenes because I was a little weirdo. And
yes.
But I'll always remember Buddy Repperton, who, another great King bully, after he, I believe, gets either in the car accident or gets sideswiped by the car, but he talks about how his breath is hitching, and King uses the idea that his bones are puncturing his lungs, and blood was coming out of his mouth. That to me is such a horrifying, like, I had never encountered something like that when I was a preteen reading this in my grandma's basement, and that general concept was really unnerving to me. And for him to resurrect it here, sort of using it the way he does, is to me it's spooky, but it's also good writing. Just in sort of drawing a really clear image of what's going on inside this mangled body, and just the phrase that Joe uses when he's down there and he's like, Dolores, I'm all broken, like that phrase is very unnerving to me. So yeah, any other sections that you guys have? Anything that stands out? I've got one more here if y'all are done.
I was trying to figure out how to say no in a Maine accent.
Naya?
The opposite of
Yep.
Like, Chad, are you saying yeah or yeah?
This is just a really gross image that I thought was effective. And I feel like this has happened to me before. This is near the end of the book, 88% in my Kindle edition. I drew a glass of water and found I couldn't abide the smell of it. It smelled like pennies that have been carried around all day in some kid's sweaty fist. That's just gross. That's all.
And it's so evocative. That just reminds me of summer camp for some reason. Like, we always had like little, like, you know, the spare change you collected to buy like one piece of candy or something somewhere, and it's like hot, and you're getting it out of your
Out of like your bathing suit or something.
Yeah.
I love that. Cool. I think that's some good stuff. And a sort of a natural segue, since we were talking about Joe and the well, and I'm sure you guys have some sections from that in this next section, but it's time to head into the cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
Welcome to the cemetery. This is the section of the podcast where we discuss stuff that spooked us, that maybe gave us nightmares, that maybe made us poop our pants or something. Who knows? So,
as it were.
I don't think that's happened yet on the pod, but I'm hoping that by the end, one of us will have shat themselves because they were so scared. So, what do you guys have?
I think I said before that I think that her killing Joe actually is, beside the Gerald's Game crossover, the spookiest and most supernatural part of the book, and that way in which sometimes in real life we do have moments where it feels like we are in an otherworldly place, and I imagine the eclipse would only magnify that.
Yeah.
And I'm almost embarrassed to admit that this really scared me, but it did. It's on page 210 of my edition. Oh, and far off to the east, I could hear the waves striking the headland, only that's a sound you get so used to on the island you don't hardly hear it at all. I stood there with Joe's flashlight in my hand, the beam aimed at the hole in the well cap, feeling greasy, sticky sweat creeping down all over my body, stinging in the cuts and digs that the blackberry thorns made. And I told myself to kneel down and look in the well. After all, wasn't that what I'd come there to do? It was, but once I was actually there, I couldn't do it. All I could do was tremble and make a high moaning sound in my throat. My heart wasn't really beating either, only fluttering in my chest like a hummingbird's wings. And then a white hand all streaked with dirt and blood and moss snaked right out of that well and grabbed my ankle.
Oh,
yes.
And I actually didn't see that coming. I am so disappointed in myself. Like, when I got to that sentence, I was like, "Ooh!"
I just picture you putting down the book and look out the window or something.
It was a little like that. I was like, "Wow, I can't believe he scared me that way." Like, that's such a cheap scare. It's like a jump scare, and yet it totally worked.
It's wild too. It's wild too, just because. You think for a second it's a dream, you think that this is just a vision she's having. It's the end of Carrie, but I love that he kind of really commits to it. It strains credulity, obviously. I think the idea that Joe could be able to climb all that way, but the idea that, because I have this section written down as well, and I think that, for me, the idea that she went to sleep and during that time he was crawling, this bloody figure crawling the stones and like that. That's another image that really sticks with me. The idea that, if she had slept, a half hour longer, he might have made his way into the room and killed her. And that's like a really terrifying image to me. But it also feels very Kingian. I feel like if King had not written this story, but someone else did, we wouldn't have gotten this whole section. But this is very much sort of a, the serial or the killer you shoot in the head comes back from the dead or something.
Well, I liked what you all said about even though Gerald's Game reference aside, it's not totally supernatural, but King does do this thing where he has wounded villains get delirious to the point where they have a newfound strength, and it's not like Joe is an actual zombie or something, but I think because he's drunk when he gets shoved down the well, which is terrifying to me also. And then the fact that because he's in such a haze that he's almost becoming even more monstrous than he was before. I mean, the scariest thing for me was the part you read, Randall, with the image of seeing him as a little white face but with stones in his eyes. That to me was so creepy. And this is more, I don't know, maybe this is more sad than cemetery scary, but the fact that he goes back and forth between accusing her, asking for help, and then eventually just asking for a drink. And when she does bring him a drink, that's the thing that makes him the most pissed off. That just felt like a very sad and very true of Joe thing for me. So, that's my cemetery stuff too. I didn't write down the actual passages.
Mm-hmm. I have one more passage, which is the moment that also gave me a little bit of a jump scare. It's toward the end, page 225 in my edition, from when Vera falls down the stairs. Dolores, sorry.
I love our performances. It's great.
I couldn't figure. It's like the beginning of the passage. Dolores, she screamed, and then there was a solid, meaty thud. It turns my blood cold to remember that sound. It was just like the one Joe made when he hit the bottom of the well. I seen her do a cartwheel and then had heard something snap. The sound was as clear and harsh as a stick of kindling when you break it over your knee. I saw blood squirt out the side of her head, and that was all I wanted to see. I turned away so fast my feet tangled in each other, and I went to my knees. I was staring back down the hallway toward her room, and what I saw made me scream. It was Joe. For a few seconds I saw him as clear as I see you now, Andy. I saw his dusty, grinning face peeking out at me from under her wheelchair, looking through the wire spokes of the wheel that had got caught in the door. Yeah. It was just like that whole scene, because it's like that scene is so psychedelic and weird anyway, because it's like Vera is seeing something. She's seeing the dust bunnies, and you know it's the ghosts of her past that like chase her out of her chair. And then like the thought that she's seeing maybe the face of her husband or her children, and then Dolores sees the face of Joe, and it's almost like he pushed her out of the chair and like set her running, you know, like just that that's another, like, it's, you know, it's not necessarily really happening, but it's blurring that line of supernatural and like, you know, just slight psychosis, and I thought it was very effective.
Yeah, all the sections that with the dust bunnies and the faces, and then also the wires too. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's stuff that was kind of the first cemetery stuff I really wrote down. That stuff really freaks me out. I mean, just the idea of somebody seeing something that you can't see is always is kind of a reliable horror trope for me. And I used to have a very haunted cat many years ago who I felt like was always staring at something in the wall that I couldn't see.
Yes.
And it used to terrify me, but I also loved that about the cat. I had a song called Spooky Cat I used to sing about her. And I stand
a haunted cat. That's it.
Yes. I love what you were saying, Dan, too, about sort of the supernatural in King stories, when the villains become so destroyed physically, but they keep going, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, Jack's like that at the end of The Shining in his own way too. And I think about certain characters whose like guts are falling out of their stomachs and they keep coming after the character, you know? It's such like an established King trope, and it's kind of neat to see it happen in this book that is decidedly non-supernatural. But I do agree with everything you guys are saying about how the eclipse sort of does give a certain magic to that whole murder section, where things that feel beyond reality continue to happen. And it's something that I think really works. But I think finally, the last thing I'll say in the cemetery section is, you know, King obviously has it's in two different King books that I think about death by falling in a well, which is such a terrifying, horrible way to die for me, because A, I'm someone who's scared of heights, and B, I'm someone who is claustrophobic.
Yes.
So the idea of like dying at the bottom of a wet, dank, stony well is like by yourself with no recourse. Like, one of the saddest, hardest sections of The Stand to me is still that girl in the section where it's like all the people who lived but then died in ways that were non-plague related, when that girl is running and like it's like a little girl and she falls into
version, where it's all what are those chapters called? I reread the non-standard one or the standard one just a little while ago, and I missed those chapters so much.
That's the only part of the extended version that you really need. Basically,
the rest you can get rid of it.
And yeah, but it's like, man, I can't remember what it's called, but that section with the little girl in the well, she like breaks her leg when she falls down there and just dies. Yeah.
I want to put a plug in for The Wanderers, then, the Chuck Wendig book.
Oh, yeah?
One of the scariest sections of the book is when he talks about the tragedies that occur that are like plague related.
Yeah.
That are the same thing. Like what happens, like one of the things is Miami gets hit by a hurricane, like while everyone is, sick and dying. And so like all this stuff that doesn't have to happen happens. Like all these people who could have lived in a normal world, Anyway.
Feels way too real.
Yeah, that's
It's like the murder hornets right now that everyone's talking about, right? It's like, oh man.
Yep.
Yeah, this too.
Not now, murder hornets.
Yeah, no, exactly. Also some good well horror in 1922 also.
You're right.
Yeah.
I forgot about that one.
Animals and wells, so yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, cool. Any other spooky things in the cemetery, or have all the graves been dug up?
No, I think, and the only thing I'll say, and I'll say this very quickly, is that just the idea of being bedridden and depending on someone is what I found truly the most terrifying and haunting part of it. And, so you really I feel like, very sympathetic to Vera in those moments.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, the cemetery gates have closed, and it's time for a snack. As you know, if you are a listener of the podcast, we love to dine on something called pound cake, so let's open up the fridge.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin.
Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
Welcome to Pound Cake. This is the section of the podcast where we discuss sections that maybe made us laugh when we weren't supposed to, or sections that we just found maybe a little bit much, I think is a good way to put it. There wasn't a lot of weird sex as there is in a lot of King books in this one, but we did get a couple very funny sections. And this was another thing. I told you guys that I remembered very few things from when I read this as a kid. And one of them, though, was Dolores describing Vera's like hunky guy as having pants so tight that he was showing the world he had balls as big as mason jars. And I remember being really young and not knowing what mason jars were. And I went and asked my parents, and then I think like they eventually showed me a picture because they thought it was so weird that I asked that question. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. His balls shouldn't be that big. Like, I was taking it very literally.
Well, also, too,
depends on the
shape-wise, like, I guess that's not if I'm going to describe big spheres, like a mason jar is not like circle-shaped at all. It's very strange. It's like, oh, my balls were as big as a bush of thorns or something. You're like, what? No, that's not how balls are shaped. Yeah.
I love it. Did you guys have any other moments of pound cake that you thought were delicious, as they say?
Ew, no. Sorry. I hate the word delicious. I had a visceral reaction. I struggled with this one because normally I would include the poop stuff or whatever, but I just didn't in this case because of what we discussed previously, re-poop.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, like I actually, because of the lack of weird sex, had trouble finding any pound cake delicious or not.
And there's all the stuff with
the... Like I said before, I don't think the scene itself is funny or out of place. It's a shit scene. But some of the ways Dolores describes it, I don't know. I don't know if I would even call it a bit much because I feel like she would describe it like this. It just made me chuckle, I guess. So I'll go ahead and read it. A trigger warning for gross body here. Oh, it's the stuff. It's on page 27 of the first edition, and she's talking about having to get up to Vera's room in time to change her. And she says, once or twice I went up too soon. That wasn't no good. It was like a racer getting disqualified for jumping the gun. You had to get up there after she had her motor running too fast to shut down. But before she'd actually popped her clutch and dumped a load into those big old continence pants she wore, I got pretty good at it. You would too if you knew you'd end up hossing 190 pounds of old lady around if you timed it wrong. It was like trying to deal with a hand grenade loaded with shit instead of high explosives. It's just like, I mean, like I said, I don't even think that's out of place. It's just like, so it's one of those things too where King like goes on 4 sentences too long. You go, okay, we got it, King. She's
clearly having a good time. She's
gonna shit the bed. I think I kind of like those moments because I always picture himself as his keyboard, just like making himself laugh, like this is. So yeah, that was all I wrote down. Yeah.
I have a shit moment too, but it's later, and I think the reason it made me laugh so hard was I was like, I thought we were past the shit, Steven, you know? And but then around 12% in location 441 in the Kindle edition, Dolores goes, I came across the room taking great big strides, and that was a mistake because one of my loafers came down on a turd, and I damn near went spraying on my back. And it just made me laugh because I was like, more shit. Like that was what I wrote in my notes. I was like, come on, buddy.
So,
I
have something for that scene too. Like the shit on the curtains. Like Party's like, what? Like
yeah, what is she doing? Yeah.
I have a friend who she has a story she does at storytelling events like here in Chicago occasionally. And Dan, you might have heard this one. It's our friend Brenna.
Oh yeah.
But she has a story about studying in the UK and having this roommate who was a little bit weird but mostly normal. And then one day,
keep going. Sorry, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, one day she came home and the bathroom was just covered in shit, like from top to bottom.
No.
Like it was on the ceiling, it was on the curtains, it was on the mirror, and she didn't know what to do. And the thing was, the roommate was home in her room, but wouldn't acknowledge it. And Brenna didn't know what to do because she didn't know her very well, and she was like right about to move out as well. The roommate was, and so Brenna ended up just cleaning it up and like waiting for this person to say something because they wouldn't acknowledge it or do anything. And that she's like, we never spoke about it ever.
Oh my God.
She's like,
That's what I would
no
have
idea
assaulted my roommate. I would have physically assaulted her. Be like, you get your ass out and you clean up your fucking bathroom full of shit. Oh my God. I can't deal with poop. I'm like blood and like other like it's fine, but like poop is where I draw the line. Like I just can't.
Well, good news because we are moving on from the bathroom and we are heading into King's Dominion.
There's another world out there.
I know there is.
Welcome to King's Dominion, and this is the section of the podcast where we talk about what connection this book has to other books in the Stephen King universe. And as we've mentioned previously, this book is kind of unique in that it was initially written as a companion to another book that was released separately, Gerald's Game.
Did you say say Kingpanion just now? You're like, oh, Kingpanion.
No, but I should have said that, shouldn't I? But yeah, so I think that the thing was, it was actually, I found the connection less profound on this reading, I think, than I did previously, because I think I always thought that there was maybe more rumination on the psychic connection that existed between Jesse and Dolores, but instead it's more of just, I don't know. It's like it's more of a moment of psychic happenstance is how it feels. And if there's one thing that I do love, though, it's the way, I feel like the way that Mike Flanagan in the Gerald's Game 2018 film, the way he sort of incorporates it, where it is a moment where Jessie acknowledged it as something that made her feel less alone in a time of great distress. I actually liked it because the dialogue is rewritten somewhat in the film to make it fit in that way. And when I interviewed Mike Flanagan, he kind of confirmed that was his intention with it. He wanted to keep the King's Dominion aspect of it alive, but also make sure that it didn't feel completely out of place. But here, it is interesting to see sort of reality rip a little bit and for these two to sort of make this connection with this eclipse. I guess like we've already touched on it, but was there any other resonance that maybe emerged from this moment that you haven't had a chance to touch on yet?
I mean, it's weird because I almost kind of want them to see each other more than they do, Like, I feel like if we're going to go for that, just, go all the way with it and have it sort of inform. I feel like what happens is Dolores just kind of sees it and then it sort of bakes into her thought process a little bit. But I almost want it to be more of a catalyst for continuing to do the thing that she's going to do. And Lara, you might know better than I just reread Gerald's Game. In Gerald's Game, in the book, does she see Dolores? Like, I don't remember that, but maybe I'm just forgetting.
Yeah, she does see her. She sees. Okay. I think she's. I can't remember exactly, but I know she mentions like the broken slip, and she sees a woman on the ground with a stone. I think. So I think she's seeing.
That's right.
Yeah, she's seeing her in the moment by the well, and it's because that's happening during the eclipse. So they sort of glimpse each other in that moment during the eclipse. And then like she thinks about it later in the book. I don't know. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I almost want, and not that I need them to have a conversation or something like that, but I almost I feel like it doesn't. I agree with what you said, Randall, about it not being as profound this read around. And I think it's because it's almost more. it feels more like an Easter egg than anything, right? Even though these books
Yeah.
were planned as companion pieces to each other, and maybe King realized that, and he's like, oh, there's not enough of a connection there to make that work. So yeah, I mean, I don't dislike the moment by any means, but I wish it was, because I'm even looking at the first editions of both books right now. They both have the same font of the title. They're both kind of like they're even aesthetically, they look like they're supposed to be companion pieces, much like Desperation and the Regulators or something. And I just wish those connections were a little bit stronger.
So I think with this connection, it's, King was at this point in his career where he wanted to write about women who were sort of overcoming sexism or abuse in various ways, and these books are also a connection to Rose Madder, which is a book that would come out several years later. Have any of you guys read Rose Madder?
It's funny, like, actually, when I bought the used copy of Dolores Claiborne, it came with Rose Madder.
Oh, interesting.
And I could get up and look. I think it has the same font too, like the kind of handwriting-ish font.
Let me go. I embarrassingly have a big Muppet action figure covering Rose Madder. So let me go look. I'm sorry.
And mine's in it, like, just not nearby for me to grab, but.
But yeah, Rose Madder is an interesting book. It's one I read way too young, and I haven't read it since then. But it's in terms of the way it portrays physical abuse and sexual abuse, it is much more graphic than either of these novels. And, it'll be an interesting book to revisit. And if you do read it, Anna, let me know. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. But these were, I think it was sort of a trilogy of books, although Rose Madder came out, I think, after Insomnia, which was, and we're not going to get to Insomnia until much later this year. So Rose Madder probably won't be until next year. But it's, But, it is interesting that this was sort of an area that he wanted to explore. And I do feel like, at least in some ways, the ways that he wanted to connect these books beyond the thematic connections you're right, Dan. They feel more like Easter eggs rather than they feel like something profound or something impactful to the actual narrative. So I've always thought it was kind of neat that the two books sort of intersected in their way, but I kind of wish that there was a little bit more to grasp onto.
I can confirm Rose Madder, it's not the exact same font, but yeah, it's definitely similar. It's that red slashy, almost looks like Written in Blood kind of thing. Yeah, from what I've only read Rose Madder once, but I remember it being, because the violence is in real time, it's not remembered, right? It's like her husband coming after her, and I remember it being pretty brutal, even as a kid. Just the way he stalks her and assaults her and everything. But man, Rose Madder, yeah, I'm interested to read that one. Since I don't remember a ton about it other than the actual concept and that it's a very brutal book.
Yeah, I remember some things from a few of the really graphic stuff early on. And I know the ending is really cool, but it's one that I think will be an interesting revisit, if a difficult one.
I almost feel like because Lissy's story is connected to Rose Madder, and I think that's actually a much better book dealing with some similar rivalries and themes. Yeah,
love that book.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, cool. And then I guess a few other small bits of King's Dominion. I mean, one big one is that Storm of the Century, the TV movie that was made. Man, when was that? Was that a 90s thing? I should have looked that up.
Yeah, I've actually never seen Storm of the Century.
It's pretty good. I mean, it was when I saw it.
That's on Little Tall Island?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's set on Little Tall Island.
And so is Home Delivery, which is in Nightmares and Dreamscapes, isn't on Little Tall Island, but it's on an island right next to it. It's like a series of small main islands, and they mention Little Tall Island on that one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Yeah, similarly, there is The Reach, which is collected, I believe, in Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
Am I correct on that? Yeah. Skeleton Crew's The Reach is set on Goat Island, which I believe is probably part of that same group of islands. But it is about The Reach, and it's about a woman who tries to cross it to the mainland during a snowstorm, I believe. It's a really lovely story.
Yeah, I like that story a lot. It's really good.
Yeah, and that closes out Skeleton Crew, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah, it's there's another really good one right before that. Skeleton Crew is weird because there's so many duds in that book, but there's some really, really good ones. I remember I remember it ending strong with The Reach, and I can't remember what the other book is.
And Dan, you're currently reading Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which is our next book on the pod. Listen, listeners. It is. Have you read Dedication yet?
God, yes. Yeah, I read Dedication.
Yeah, it's not.
Oof,
it's
man.
Not good.
Oddly enough, I was reading Dedication has been adapted by 2 different women filmmakers into Dollar Babies for film school. So, like, I'd actually be curious to see. I feel like a film adaptation maybe could correct some of the weirdness of that book or of that story. But I will say, Nightmares and Dreamscapes, like, way better than I remember it being. I think it's like his most solid short story collection since Night Shift right now. I still have a few more to go. I mean, it starts off with a couple of duds, but then once he gets into Night Flyer, I feel like it's got a really good trajectory.
Night Flyer is that's great.
So good, yeah. Classic King for sure.
Well, the funny thing about Dedication is that in the notes for the book, King actually said it was a trial cut for a novel called Dolores Claiborne.
Really? It's weird because I remember reading that it was a trial for something else. I didn't know. Wait, how would that have... Well, I guess it is about, like, a cleaning woman, so, like, that has some connections to it for sure.
Yeah, it might have just been an earlier vision he had for it that didn't quite pan out.
Yeah, it is.
So
I'll save it for Nightmares and Dreamscapes, but boy, there's some nasty stuff in that story. And,
yeah, that's an odd story.
Yeah.
And then one other fun bit of King's Dominion. Do we have any insomnia heads on the pod?
I think just you, Randall.
I think it's just me.
I like it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's a book I've read weirdly like 3 times, even though it's 800 pages and like nobody really loves it. But did you catch the King's Dominion with that in this?
No. Oh, except is that the Atropos one?
Yeah.
I thought I saw the Atropos, and part of me was like, I did have a moment, which is maybe like a little condescension to rural Mainers, where I was like, really? She has a Atropos in her back pocket there?
The Hendrix piece that I was quoting earlier also mentions that. Like, come on, what do you... Like, this is King talking, not Dolores in that moment. But basically, Dolores at one point says, looking at her that way made me think of a story my grandmother used to tell me about the 3 sisters in the stars who knit our lives. One to spin and one to hold and one to cut off each thread whenever the fancy takes her. I think that last one's name was Atropos. Even if it's not, the name has always given me the shivers. Clearly, that's those 3...
fates.
The 3 women in the stars.
Fates,
Yeah, fates. It plays a huge role in Insomnia in terms of 3 characters that are very interesting. Especially Atropos is a very interesting.
It's funny because I have it in my little makeshift index of King's Dominion in the back, but I couldn't quite place it. But there is a Shawshank mention, which is required by law in any King book, and then there is also a Salem's Lot.
Is there?
Oh, I might have
yeah, 174 in my edition. Although it wasn't only 1:15 or so when I got to the village and the start of the eclipse, still over 3 hours away. The streets were so empty it was spooky. It made me think of that little town in the southern part of the state where they say no one lives.
I was
wondering
about
I totally
that.
missed that.
I felt like I knew that was in like my head as something, but I couldn't place it. So very good.
I'm looking because at the front of the book, I think they have that map of Maine, don't they? Let me see where.
But they don't. I'm just looking right now. I remember that too because Dark Score Lake and Derry and Castle Rock are on there, and Haven.
But yeah, maybe I guess.
But no Salem's Lot. I don't think.
No, I'm not seeing it either. Isn't it? Am I wrong? Because what you said, southern part of the state, right, Anna?
Yeah.
Am I wrong in Lewiston is near Salem's Lot? Am I making that up? Because Lewiston's in the southern part. Maybe. I mean, I guess it's.
I am positive that's a mention of Salem's Lot.
Yeah. Oh, no, totally.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
Oh, and then one other. I have one other, which is he likes to have like large families populate his books. And isn't Marchant somebody? Isn't that a family name he's used before?
Oh, yeah,
Marchant.
that does ring a bell.
It was familiar. There were a bunch of little things that struck me as familiar, and I couldn't place.
Yeah, actually, when I read that name, I thought, I was like, is that a name I've seen in this book?
Oh, and McCandless. That's another one. I mean, I guess I could go through all of these. And like, I guess I assumed that y'all King heads would like... I didn't Google it because I was going to be pleasantly surprised when you told me, oh, yeah, that's so-and-so.
As much as we do have... I'd say our knowledges of King are vast, but maybe not encyclopedic. But I'm like Googling it now. It is fun because some of our listeners have more encyclopedic.
All right, I'll Google too if we're allowed to do this.
Yeah,
the Lead brothers the lead roles of Ghost Brothers of Darkland County, which is the musical King was writing with John Mellencamp and T-Bone Burnett, is Joe McCandless and Monique McCandless. So there's that.
There must be another one, because there's no way I would, like, my King knowledge doesn't extend to his unproduced musicals.
I listened to this soundtrack once because it has like Elvis Costello and Nico Case and all. I mean, not people who I don't think they were in it, but I was like, oh, that's cool. And look, hey, I like theater and I like Stephen King. Was not a big fan of Ghost Brothers of Darkland County, but I also don't like John Mellencamp much at all. So,
in Christine, there's a character named Richard McCandless. He is an American Legion post secretary. So
maybe it's just one of those last names that I kind of like. He does tend to reuse like last names, and I also think that in his mind they are all connected families.
Oh, totally.
When I hear McCandless, my first thing I think of is Chris McCandless, the Into the Wild guy. Which, hey, maybe that could be like a King horror story. I don't know, but I feel like I can't break out of like thinking of him in a bus. And how do you spell? What was it? Ana Marchant? How do you spell that?
Marchant, like Marchant, and I could be just completely wrong.
It does sound like a. Is it the? Oh no, in Salem's Lot's the Marsh House. I was gonna say, is it the Marchant House? And let's see. Oh wait,
wait. I see a Needful Thing characters, Billy Marchant.
And also in our favorite, the Bill Hodges trilogy, there's a character named Dr. Elton. Oh no, Elton Merchant. Never mind.
No, this is a Marchant in the Needful Things characters.
That's probably why it was ringing a bell for me, because we just did Needful Things. But there is about 8,000 characters in that book.
Yeah, that's true. My God. Like, I don't know. Maybe let's move on.
Yeah, love it. No, it's great. It's great. But yeah, and then I'm trying to think. I think that's a good summation. But then also, this is very much a Room 237. But guess who also used to connect? Vera collects carnival glass. Do we remember who else does?
Yeah, the one.
Nettie Cobb from Needful Things loves her carnival glass. And carnival glass was always a very foreign concept to me, especially when I was younger. And so the idea of people collecting it is interesting. But it's fun to watch sort of these ideas bounce. Like sometimes they just seem like they take up residence in King's Head and then are in like 3 books that all come out in a row and then disappear for a while. It always cracks me up. But yeah, so I think that's probably the extent of the King's Dominion here. But the nice thing is some of our listeners will probably chime in with a few others. We always love to hear from you guys in that regard. And so I think it's time for our final thoughts.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Welcome to Final Thoughts. This is the part of the podcast where we share our final thoughts on the books, and we give it a nose rating. Anna, I hope you're excited to give your first bright red Pennywise Clown nose rating. This is a very exciting, important part of the podcast. So why don't we each go around and just kind of say our, brief thoughts on the end, in the end of what we think works about this book, what doesn't, and what nose rating we give it. So Dan, why don't you kick us off?
Oh man, I feel... this is I don't know. This is an episode that I feel like is sort of changing my opinion of the book as it goes along, and I don't think my bright red Pennywise Clown nose, I can't even say it, is the same now as it was at the start, because I rated this very highly on Goodreads when I finished it. All right, it's always tough because this was actually a very easy book for me to read. Like I was invested in it. Even though it's a bit much, as we say, I really actually like Dolores' voice. I love the central relationship between her and Vera, and I just like what happens in the novel. A lot of the stuff we were talking about, though, with the King's view of feminism or like the trying and all that stuff is making me think about it a little bit differently now. So I'm going to go with and also with Joe, how he's his villain. Sorry, I'm not making any sense right now. I'm just like literally thinking out loud. I'm going to go with 4 bright red Pennywise Clown noses out of 5, and I think I would have gone with 4.5 or 5 before this episode. But I like what
5. Damn, Dan.
Wow.
It's so tough. I don't know. I'm like not. I feel like I'm a bit too much of a King stan sometimes because I think sometimes I just go off of like readability, right? Like, oh man, that was really interesting, and I finished it really quick. 5 stars. Whereas something like Road
Well, we have tougher nose givers and lighter nose givers on the pod. I feel like you and I are sort of more generous with our noses than other people.
I probably would have gone with 4.5 before this episode. I'm going to knock it down half a nose to 4. So yeah, I'm 4. This is the most incoherent. I feel like I was like, yeah, it's good. I liked it. Cool. 4 noses. 4 noses. That's what I got.
All right. How about you, Lara?
I, too, will go with 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses. I did really enjoy this book in a lot of ways. I mean, enjoy feels like the wrong word because it is an incredibly sad book. And I think despite its flaws, it's very memorable. So some of the characters and the core relationship of Dolores and Vera, I think, is very successful. And like that alone lends a lot of weight to this book because it's not the kind of relationship you typically see ever in anything. And there are some really affecting moments and some really memorable images. And I think it's definitely worth reading. It's a quick read. It's a light, for as heavy as the subject matter is and as sad as it is, it's a very breezy read. But, I agree with a lot of the flaws that we sort of came upon in this conversation, so I can't really give it any more than that. But I think especially reading it in companion with Gerald's Game, it sort of completed that thought for me, and I'm glad that I read it. And again, it's just such a sad, sad book. But I'm gonna go with 4 noses.
Cool. I think I'm gonna give it 3.5 out of 5 bright red Pennywise clown noses. I think that there's some tough parts with it, and I think that it's I like when King experiments a little bit, even if I don't find the experiment wholly successful. I like a lot of what we discussed about sort of the ideas of memory and trusting your sort of narrator here. King, I think King is a little out of his comfort zone when he writes from this perspective, but I do think that the whole well section, the murder of Joe, to me is very striking and very memorable. The relationship with Vera really works for me, and I think I like the pace at which it moves. I think that at least is a successful part of the book for me. Not top tier King, I don't think, but I'm actually quite excited to visit the film of this because this strikes me as the kind of book where the film adaptation could very well surpass the book, which is not something I would usually say about a lot of King works. But I've not seen the film, and I'm excited to visit it. So yeah, I'm gonna go with a solid 3.5 out of 5. Now, how about you, Ana?
Well, this book was quite a journey for me. I would say if you had asked me to rate it like about even a quarter of the way in, I would have been maybe as low as 2 bright red Pennywise noses. And then before we started talking, by the end of it, I think I was at 3. And this discussion has actually bumped it up a notch for me because I was able, we talked about a lot of the stuff that was good. I got off my chest some of the stuff that really annoyed me. I wish almost, it's funny for a 3-hour discussion that there's more I feel like we could have gotten into, but that relationship between Vera and Dolores that I know Laura also found to be the highlight of the book is what redeems the book for me in a real way. Because at first, like when he first starts talking about Dolores comforting Vera, there was a part of me that was like, really? Yeah. But then as the book goes on, it gets more and more real. And the respect they have for each other and the ways that they're both broken and both try to heal themselves, Dolores much more successfully than Vera. Yeah, so I guess I'd go with 3.5. Like, I guess from my point of view, the way I look at the bright red Pennywise noses is would I reread it? And I think it has to be a 4 before I would like happily reread it.
Sure,
and I don't see myself going back to this.
Yeah.
I'm glad I read it again. Like I think King is, he is a woke dude, and for all the good and bad that brings into the world, he is a woke white dude. And this is a particularly earnest attempt, which we shouldn't maybe give points for trying, but I really feel like he just went as far as he could. In developing the abusive relationship. So it's kind of funny where he really hits the mark is in that relationship between the two women. So
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
3.5.
Cool.
Man,
well said.
That's a higher cumulative nose reading than I thought, and I'm glad we were all able to meet each other in the middle on the nose ratings. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, we all worked on each other's minds.
This was a fun discussion, and it was great to have you on, Ana. And then hopefully, if scheduling works out and you're down, would love to have you on for Desperation, a very different kind of King book. So.
Oh, it's like my low key favorite. Like it's so weird. It's just. Yeah,
I'm really excited to revisit both that and The Regulators, because I remember very strange things from those books, but don't remember them as a whole very well.
Yeah, those are two books for me that I've been saying, I think, since we started the pod, that I can't wait to get to them, because I have a strong relationship, especially with Desperation, and but I haven't reread it in many, many, many years. So,
Ana, I know you had mentioned some of the other stuff you're working on at the beginning of the podcast, but any other plugs you want to give for anything you're involved with?
The new season of With Friends Like These is starting. I don't know when this podcast is going up, but
we're going up on March 22nd.
May 22nd. So. Yeah.
Or May, yeah. May
yeah, I know time has no meaning. Yeah. It's okay. And to the extent that time has meaning, the new season of With Friends Like These launches on May 15th, and it has a theme for the first time, which is conversion experiences and converts. Be looking at people who change their minds about huge things, whether it's like religion or politics or who they are, that kind of thing. I think it will be of interest to anyone who's interested in King, actually. I think he's interested in those experiences as well, the things that transform us. So
cool.
Super cool.
So listen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so check out that podcast. And anything, Dan, Lara, you want to plug?
So I don't have a lot of the concrete details yet, but I am working on a podcast project that you will be hearing more about soon. That's going to be on the Consequence Network. It's going to be about horror and mental health. Cool. And I'm really excited about it. I'm working with some people that I will not name until some of the more details come together, but it's a real cool idea that I'm super, super excited about. And I think it's going to be great.
Is one of the people Stephen King?
Yes. Yeah, it's me, Stephen King, Joe Hill.
Oh man.
And
the whole family.
Yeah.
King. It's called King.
That's
King
great.
and Co.
Well, we'll definitely be plugging that on the pod, obviously. And then Dan, anything you want to plug? Mr. MFA?
Yeah, people hire me, please. And when my funding runs out in June, I'll need a job. No.
Are you moving soon? You're going to Atlanta, right?
Yeah, I mean, the plan is for us to go in once our lease ends here in July. And obviously, big life changes are all kind of tentative right now. But that is the goal. The plan right now is to move to Atlanta in late July, early August. So, hey, man, if anyone in Atlanta wants to talk King and we're allowed to see each other face to face, come find me. Nothing to plug. But, hey, hopefully I'll have something to plug in the coming months. We shall see.
Cool. I'll plug our socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Please follow us. And if you like what you're hearing, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/thebarons. We've got minisodes, a newsletter, and exclusive episodes 2 times a month, in addition to the minisodes. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be back with a Patreon episode next week. And then also we're going to be talking about the Dolores Claiborne film adaptation coming up. And then we've also gotten our Nightmares and Dreamscapes coverage. So there's plenty on the docket. And we'll probably be talking in some of our minisodes about the new adaptation of Revival that is in the works from Mike Flanagan, who did Dr. Sleep, and Gerald's Game, which are, Gerald's Game especially is probably my favorite King adaptation since The Mist. So I'm always excited when Flanagan's working on a King project. So stay tuned for that stuff. And in the meantime, long days and pleasant nights.
Oh, I screwed up. Long days, pleasant nights.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
We never get it right. Yeah.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
Consequence Podcast Network.